All right, everybody, we're going to get this council workshop going. I'd like you all to please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. We'll have Jacob do our roll call real quick.
Wheelock. Here. Hershey.
Hershey, it might be online. We don't know. He had to
Okay.
travel for work.
Tomlinson.
Here.
Nielsen.
Present.
Chadwick.
Here. All right. We're going to get rolling on with the first part of our workshop today. We're going to have a couple things to talk about. We have some folks here to talk about LIDs and CIDs, so we have a better understanding of them. And then we're going to work on some more of our code discussion for our code updates afterwards. So I think, are you presenting? Oh, hang on a sec. We're going to get a microphone set up over here.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right.
If you want to introduce the members of your team or whoever is here for you.
All right. My name is Pam Giss. I'm with Launch Development Finance Advisors. We work on special districts and other types of financing for development projects across the United States. I'm here tonight with Inspirata Project and Randy Clarno, and I'll let him introduce his group. And then Elizabeth Kekaritz, the attorney with Gibbons Pursley, is also here. So we've got the full range of people to talk to you about the legality, the project itself, and then I can talk to you about the financing. If I'm covering anything that you all already know and you want me to speed up, please let me know and I'm happy
So I'm
to
going to
skip.
just tell you, we have no idea really about LIDs or
Perfect.
CIDs. So we're here to be educated about them.
Perfect.
There's a lot of discussion about this stuff now.
There is a lot.
Even
There's
in
a
the
lot.
legislature.
There is, across the country. So basically what's happening is on these high growth states, the cost of infrastructure has risen so high, so fast, that developers are trying to figure out how to make these projects work. And with traditional financing, let me see here. With traditional financing, it's just become very difficult. So one of the questions that I get quite a bit is, why isn't the developer paying for the public infrastructure? The developer doesn't pay for anything. Everything goes into the price of the house, the building, whatever it is, the cost of the streets, the permitting at the city level, all of those things get wrapped up into the price of each home or each building. And so all we're talking about is, how do we pay for it? Where is the source of revenue coming from? Is it going to come, to the developer through the home price or some other avenue? Let's see. So there are three main sources of revenue and available for the developer. There's going to be private equity. Private equity right now with the increase in rates has been between 15 and 20%. A lot of, some portion of these developments are still financed in part by private equity, but it's very, very expensive financing, and developers are trying to get that off their books as quickly as they can. Traditional bank loans, that's a second source of financing that you would think, but it's hard to get financing from a bank for horizontal infrastructure. Banks do not like to lend on land with horizontal infrastructure because if something happens, they don't really have anything to sell. It's a problem for them. So it's hard debt to get. It's also more expensive. So I think it's dipped below 10% now, but it's still expensive financing. It's also very short term, 3 to 5 years, and that can be a problem for some developers. The next source would be some kind of a developer or some kind of a district. So here I've got CID, special assessment bonds, and CID-GO bonds. In this particular discussion, that should be CID or LID, special assessment bonds. All that is a lien on the property. It's a one-time lien on each lot or acre that is imposed by a special taxing jurisdiction that would be created by another taxing jurisdiction. And those rates right now are probably at between 6% or 5.5% to 6.5%. Much cheaper debt for the private sector, and I'll talk about that too. CID, one of the things that a community infrastructure district can do that an LID, a local infrastructure or local improvement district, cannot do is issue GO bonds. That's about as cheap as debt gets for anyone. Those rates are probably 4 to 5% now, very low and cheap money. So what is an LID? Why would you use it? This is a creature of statute, just like a CID is a creature of statute. The reason why I'm going to focus a little more on LIDs, CIDs are great for projects that are larger. You've got a project here, I think, in town called Willowbrook. That's probably a candidate for a CID. Like in Eagle, we've got 2 of them, Spring Valley and Avamore, and then Harris Ranch. It requires a larger project because the cost, you're forming a separate political subdivision similar to a water district or a sewer district. It has the ability to tax and spend, and it eats. It eats like, each month someone's got to feed it. It's got lawyers, it's got accountants, it has an annual audit, it has all of these things. And so the budgets for those can run anywhere from probably $75,000 to $200,000, assuming you don't have litigation or anything. They're just more expensive, so it takes more land to do it. With an LID, that's going to fit a lot more projects. The other thing, LIDs are fairly versatile. So I'll focus on that a little bit more, but I'm happy to answer any CID questions too. So that should say, I made a typo there. LIDs they're geographic. You're not actually creating a separate political subdivision in the sense that it's a standalone district. It's a geographical taxing district so that the taxing commission of the state will know this area gets taxed, but it's a much cheaper route to go because you don't have all the costs that you have with the CID. You don't have standing lawyers. You would need to, and I'll talk about how you create them and when it's appropriate to use them, but you don't have all the costs, ongoing running costs that you would have with the CID.
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
So you listed 3 CIDs that we have going on.
Mhm.
Is there any LIDs around here happening?
There are LIDs, but they're older. So it's a tool that hasn't been used for a while. And I think now that growth is really skyrocketing, in fact, I've got a bunch of them that are kind of keying up right now. This one will probably, if you all are inclined to move forward with one, this one's probably the furthest along, but I have another one that's right on the heels that's in a different jurisdiction. So I think you're going to see more of more requests for LIDs because they're just so versatile and costs are just really high. So, sure.
Elizabeth Keckers-Givens, Pursley. I believe Gateway East in Nampa may have an LID around it. And both Nampa and Caldwell have set up a while ago, but ongoing LIDs where they're looking at them a little bit different. But then when people come in and they want to have a better way to improve their street frontages, to do things like that, they then apply, they become part of the LID, they get the special assessment on their property that they pay off over a period of time for infrastructure improvements right in front of their house. So those 2 in Caldwell and Nampa, those are much older. They've been ongoing for a while, but I do believe, and I'd have to confirm, but I think Gateway East, which is the new industrial park out there, I'm pretty sure that's an LID.
Right. Yeah, and I know Nampa has one that was put on, I think in 2010. That one I don't think was a residential. I think that was a shopping mall or something. But so they're out.
I'll have more questions probably. I want to see if you answer them before I ask.
Okay. No problem. So essentially what you're doing is you're creating an entity that can tax and spend. So you are authorizing the imposition of a special assessment on land that for which public infrastructure will be built that will benefit those landowners. So as opposed to the city going out and paying for something and all of your residents, having to chip in for infrastructure that benefits a smaller community, this is a great tool for this infrastructure benefits this community and predominantly more than the general public at large. And we're going to have them pay for their own growth. So this is, you'll hear the term growth paying for growth. This is one of those tools that allows growth to pay for growth rather than, the whole community. These bond obligations are not obligations of existing residents, and you are not responsible for those bond obligations if something happens. I think that's very important to say. If for some reason or another the development goes sideways, it is not the city's responsibility.
Is it?
It's the property owners. So these are liens on the property. Now, when I say the property owners, this is land secured debt. So what happens is, and I should also say, these bonds are purchased typically by a very small group of individuals. There's probably 15 entities in the United States that dabble in this market, and then qualified individuals that have a net worth over $1 million are also able to buy these. But it's a limited market. Like, not anybody can go out and buy these because they're risky. And the companies that are out there in there, they know how to evaluate these. They look at them all day long. And sometimes when they go sideways, the only thing that really happens is the bondholders come in. Typically, before they do any foreclosures, they negotiate with the property owner to see whether or not they feel like the developer can handle it, and they just hit a bump, or whether they need to go out and find another developer. We've worked on several districts and other jurisdictions and other states that have gone sideways. It's like bank debt. These are sophisticated people. They know what they're doing. So it's not a big calamity. Sure.
Just residential, commercial.
Hey, talk
be
in the microphones, guys, please.
Yeah. It can be
Not just residential,
it can
but
be
commercial.
residential, commercial, retail, anything. So the project that we're talking about is really a mixed use. There's residential, but there is some commercial too.
So you talk here about, or I guess reading through there, it talks about bonds, plural.
Mhm.
Does that mean that the bonds are issued sequentially, like with phases, so that you don't get just 2 or 3 people paying the whole bond amount? How does that normally work?
Depends on the structure of the deal. So these are one and done bonds as opposed to a general obligation bond. And what I mean by that is you only impose the lien on the property owner one time. Once that lien's on the property, you don't come back and reassess them, 10 years later. Once they've paid it off, they're done. They can also pay it off at any time. So if they feel like they can get a better rate through their mortgage company, they can roll it into their mortgage, no problem. So it's flexible that way too. But yeah, so it's one and done. If you have phasing with a community infrastructure district, you can phase a community infrastructure district. You cannot phase an LID. What you would need to do, let's say we wanted to break a project up into 2 different projects. We would have one LID, and then we would come back, and when the second phase of that project's ready to go, that developer would come back to you and ask for a second LID on the second phase.
And so that bond would be issued on that phase. The developer pays for all of the lots until they're sold, and then
Correct.
and then that owner takes over. Okay,
Correct.
thanks.
Correct.
And the amounts, I guess, that they're paying back is obviously going to adjust based on valuations of the property every year? Is it
No,
like a tax,
no,
or is
it's
it
not.
a fixed
It's a
amount?
flat fee.
Okay.
So as opposed to a tax rate, so the GO bond that we were talking about earlier, where you see Harris Ranch, Spring Valley, they all have GOs. That's going to, their property taxes are going to go up as the value of their land goes up. This is a set amount every year. We know exactly what it's going to be.
So maybe you said this. So how is it collected?
It's a
Through the
line
tax?
item, it's a line item through Ada County.
So if
on
it's
their tax bill.
$100 is what is determined for all the properties for 20 years, it stays at $100 a year for 20 years. or whatever
Correct.
it is, Right? Okay.
Correct.
What is a typical term?
These are 30-year bonds typically. So it's, it's all in how it's structured by the underwriters, but they're 30. I mean, the law allows us 30 years. Unlike the CID Act, there are some differences. The CID Act has what we call a lien to value ratio. So we can't put more than a certain amount of debt on the property. The LID statute doesn't have that, but as a practical matter, when the underwriters go out to market, they're going to be looking for a 3-to-1 value to lien ratio. And what that means is at the time we issue the bonds, if we have a lot that's valued at $100,000, we can issue up to $30,000 worth of debt on that lot and find a buyer for those bonds. So you have kind of a market limitation on the amount of debt that we put on each lot or each acre.
Sorry. So in that case, just what you said, if it was $30,000, it's $1,000 a year for 30 years and that's it?
Well,
Or I mean,
we've got
if that was the.
plus interest. So we've got
Plus interest.
plus interest. So there's going to be an amortization table. And again, if we've got an interest rate, let's say we've got an interest rate of, we go out to market and it's 6 or 6.5%. And a homeowner comes in and buys that lot or buys that, house. And they say, you know what, I just got 5.25. I don't want to pay your 6.5% for 30 years. I'm going to roll that into my mortgage. They can do that.
Okay. So the individuals can buy out of that thing
Sure.
and not have to do it over time. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Councilman Weedle.
That's really close to my question. It was the flat rate. Is that also amortize and take out the interest to that
Yes.
date, whenever
everything.
that date is?
Everything.
It's
So-
purely to their benefit, not to the bondholder.
It's not, it doesn't benefit the bondholder. But with these structures, that's just that's probably why, you're going to find a higher rate with us. Part of the reason you're going to find a higher rate with a special assessment. A GO, we can't do that. The GO, there's no way to buy your way out of that. And so there's a much lower rate, that and for some other reasons as well. But
Could we go back a slide
sure.
and look at that percentage of interest? Which one are we talking about here?
So the cheapest ones are the GOs.
Mhm.
We're not talking about that with an LID. That would be with a CID. So if you have a big piece of land, a big infrastructure problem that you're trying to solve, one of the things that we talked about is at one point was if you've got a number of different landowners that can't develop a chunk of land because you have to put in a wastewater treatment plant. That's $30 million. And you've got 1,200 acres that's going to be benefiting. That might be a good use of a CID, where you might have a combination of general obligation bonds and special assessment liens on and special assessment bonds on the property. There's reasons why, each one has benefits. And I won't go too deep into that, but the nice thing about the special assessment bonds, because the GO, right, because it is according to value, right, ad valorem tax according to value, you don't get any money until you start putting rooftops on the ground. So that's money that comes in later in the process. It's not any good if you want to build something now and get rid of your private equity. It is, I need to be reimbursed for these improvements. I've got the money to build them, but they're too expensive and I need to be reimbursed. Great use of general obligation bonds. Special assessment bonds for both either the CID or the LID, that is, I need the money up front to build out of. I don't have the money. I can't get the bank loan. The bank loan's 10%. The private equity is 20%. I need some cheaper money. That's where you would see the special assessment bonds being used when you need the money to build it.
How does this, so would this be for our intents and purposes, are we talking about doing this for a 40-acre block or 1,000 acres? And if you're not developing it and you're in one of those areas, you have to pay that tax anyway if you're not involved in any of the development.
So the Community Infrastructure District has a minimum requirement for a petition. So the landowners have to come to you with a petition to form the district. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's always 100%. You always have 100% of the landowners signing on. I have yet in, I won't tell you how many years, forced anybody into a district. It's not like an improvement district of old where, you know, you've got to put in a sewer line and you're just going to force a whole line of property owners into it.
Specifically, the south of the river plan, I would not want to force any farmers that were between A and B
All right, yeah.
to participate.
Can you pull your microphone up closer?
Oh,
Yeah.
sure.
Sure.
That was,
You might have to snap it up higher.
Okay. Is that working?
Yeah,
Is
it's
that
a little bit
better?
better.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the LID, the CID is great for larger projects, larger scale projects. And yes, when you're talking about farmers, we have a number of different districts with farmers. There's several different ways to get around that. With the special assessments, most of the time we don't, we set it up so we don't lien people's property unless they give us their approval first. That way the farmers, it would bankrupt them. The other thing is typically when land's in ag, it has a very low assessed value. So if you have a geo on it, they're not paying anything anyway. It's not until you start getting value in the land that you see. So
perfect. Even if they weren't paying much, they'd still be offended if they knew they were taxed.
well, you just tell them it makes their property more valuable.
That doesn't.
Okay. So I'm gonna, let's see, jump forward. So what can we pay for? Like, what are these things good for? Yes.
And I need you to,
Oh, you have to come up so they can hear your comment.
On the CIDs in particular, it takes a 2/3 vote of the landowners
Right.
to assess it.
Yeah.
So most of the time with the CIDs, there's one or two landowners that own the property before it gets developed. But in the case of the farmers, they would have a vote.
Right. Yeah. We
It's
don't.
actually, sorry, Pip, it's really similar with the LID is
Yeah.
that you have, like, if you were to try to just go into a subdivision right now and get your 66 at point whatever, 6%, it would be impossible to get people to agree to tax themselves, which is why you do it at the outset with the developer when you can just put the box around it. And then that travels with, then it becomes just it becomes on the property versus going out. But there are ways, technically, you can go and force people to join these if you wanted to really go that way and end up usually in litigation, but you can force people into it.
You just don't see it. I mean, probably every application I've never seen an application where we've got one in Arizona right now because no one knows, it's a 3-acre piece. Nobody knows who the landowner is.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. What can we pay for? With both of these tools, there's a few differences between them, but I'm not going to focus on that. It's public infrastructure, streets, roads, water, sewer, canals, sidewalks, signalization, things that get dedicated to public entities. Where we run into trouble is when we have a private water company or a private sewer company. We can't finance those improvements. So as long as we've got a public entity, and we can't finance dry utilities because, again, not public. So if it's going to a public entity, in most cases, we can finance it. And that would include parks, trails, those types of things, parking garages, if they're public. Benefits, why would you do it? We talked about growth paying for growth. And one of the things that we'll talk about on, a little bit on the project that is Inspirata is it allows the developer to put in more infrastructure at one time than they otherwise would be able to if they're so inclined and if it makes sense for the development. It speeds up the development. It lowers the cost of the infrastructure because they're not having to do it piecemeal as they sell pads or lots. And you wind up with a more uniform project generally overall. That's one of the big advantages. It lowers the cost of infrastructure for the developer and for, the end user. Because that 10% financing cost or that 20% private equity is also going to get rolled into the price of the house. We're able to build the infrastructure in advance of growth rather than alongside of growth. So you're getting the infrastructure faster in a lot of cases. And it also provides the cities with an additional financing tool. So if you've got a problem in your city, you can always reach out and say, hey, I've got this problem. We don't ever charge cities. We only work for the private sector. We can help you brainstorm. I can see if I can find someone to pay for it. That's my special gift. It does. It's one more tool that you've got. It's off your balance sheets. It's not part of your balance sheet. It doesn't hurt the city.
So before we go into Inspirato,
Yes.
can I answer a couple questions?
Absolutely.
You did answer 3 of them, which was great. in that.
Yay.
But who is is there a deciding board?
The city council.
Is it all of them or just 3? Because I've heard
It's all of them. So
4 of them.
So there's 2 different kind of things there. There's the board that reviews and approves the application of the petition. That's the city, and in the case of an LID, it can be the water and sewer district, the highway district, the county. With a CID, it's going to be the whole city council board, or if the property is in the county, within a city's planning area, it's going to be the county with the consent of the city. At this point in time, we cannot form a community infrastructure district in the county outside of the city's planning area. With an LID, there's a lot more flexibility in terms of formation. So
the LID would be, based on what you talk about tonight,
Mhm.
it would have to come before a city council
it
meeting,
would come
obviously,
before
to
the
approve it.
next-
And for that,
They meet yearly on it? I mean, is there a,
so that's how it's different than the CID. You really set up, that's where you have the separate council where you take 3-year council members and they become the board of the community infrastructure district. They have special meetings quarterly. They come together, they do all those things. That's one of the reasons why it gets so much more expensive, because then they have to have a treasurer, an attorney, they're meeting all the time. They're doing that. With the LID, it's the one and done. The developer petitions, I mean, she'll get into the steps, but essentially you make the initial upfront decisions and then there really isn't a lot else to do with it once you get through the bond issuance phase. And Pam will go through all of those, but it's all of you as a city council, as a mayor and city council for an LID.
so is it a public hearing style?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, yes, we have lots of public hearings on it.
Okay,
At least 2.
Yeah.
at least 2.
Yes,
Let's do.
2
And then-
different phases.
Then you guys, I don't know if you can answer this, but I know the CID in Harris Ranch caused a lot of issues. How do we avoid those issues if we were to do an LID here? And what were those issues, I guess, that, you know what I mean? I mean, it's interesting to hear the negative from the people that are living there. Not all of them, but from some of the people that are living there.
Okay, well, I can't, and I've not been super involved. I am with Givens Pursley, who has been representing the CID board on that. So I know a little bit about it. But most of it is stemming from the issuance of the general obligation bonds and the ongoing issuance of those bonds and the past payment. Their questions were about, a lot of the questions were about how are they now in 2024 being repaid for improvements. They're issuing bonds to get repaid for improvements that maybe happened in 2015, 2016. And so there were a lot of questions sort of going on about that. And they were GO bonds, which is different than this, where they're having those ongoing discussions. How was I supposed to be notified? Did I know that this was going on my property? And here it's really just the one and done. And then in addition, one of the things that I don't know if we get into it in detail this time, but one of the things that we're proposing is we are looking at a covenant that's running on the land. So everyone that buys lots in the future knows that it's part of this and that that's there. And so in theory, you should know, but it's just not that ongoing issue.
Okay.
There are the other kind of thing that got under everybody's craw was when they started Harris Ranch, they started it before the CID. The CID kind of came in phase 2. So there are some lots in Harris Ranch that aren't assessed and they don't pay the tax. That really made people upset because they benefit from the same infrastructure. But under the same theory that no one ever votes to tax themselves, they knew that if they tried to form the district with the existing homeowners in it, that those homeowners wouldn't go for it. And so that I know has been a big issue. And like Elizabeth said, the thing with the general obligation bonds is that unlike the city where you adjust your budget, the GOs really don't. It's just it is whatever it generates is what it generates. And so it tends to go up and it upsets people sometimes. We are not having those problems in Avamore. Avamore also has a GO and an SA. And it's been a different experience. So I think that there's just some real people that are unhappy in that development.
So could you use this LID process to help facilitate building police stations or fire stations in areas like this?
I don't know.
Because it's a public
So
thing.
the problem with the definition of infrastructure in the LID Act is different than the definition of the infrastructure in the CID Act. And when I was going through this, I originally had a police station thing right up here because it was for a CID. I don't think you can. But I'll let
Didn't she
her.
say that it could only be horizontal?
Well, for
Vertical.
CIDs, you can do police stations, we can do fire districts. We can't do school districts because at the time the legislation was drafted, the school districts wouldn't allow it. But I'm going to let Elizabeth read through that. I know, bad decision. Now I think they're second guessing that. But yeah, so yeah. Charter.
Police and fire are not included in this, but all of your other sort of standard infrastructure that would go in streets or along streets are included in this.
Okay.
Including parks, recreational facilities. I mean, there is a thing on non-conforming facilities to improve them.
Could that include fiber?
I was just going to ask, can that include,
It's not public. I think that's isn't fiber private?
Some places
public?
have their own public.
Oh, okay.
It can be.
Great. Yeah,
Well,
if it's public, I would.
to
It's
tack
owned by a
on,
private entity.
sorry, to tack onto that, the connectivity of like Internet of Things, sensors for traffic signals, other sorts of things that might require, fiber, wireless, other types of things that could enable smart city type stuff.
Signalization, you can definitely do. Incidental things you can do, but if it is infrastructure that's going to be owned by a private entity, so if the wireless or the fiber is owned by a private entity, we can't. If it's owned by a public entity, we can.
So if the city were to start its own fiber optic telecommunication system, similar to the
Legally.
couple of the other
So
cities.
that's like
can.
Eagle doing
I'm
that.
gonna
or
leave that
Ammon.
to Elizabeth to figure out.
I think Mountain Home,
Mountain Home.
has been trying to do that, I
Okay.
think.
And what about parking garages or
Yes.
If they're
public
public.
parking garages or
Public.
parking
And if
lots?
they're private and partially public, then you can finance that portion that's public. So with tax exempt.
So question for you. Why aren't LIDs used more often?
I just don't think you've needed them to date. I think that the development that Idaho in the last 5 years has just had such massive growth that, because they're a hassle. They're a hassle for the developers. They're a hassle for the builders. And if they can just go out and make things pencil easily and do things the old way, great. But when you start running into the exorbitant costs and and you're backed into a corner and you're like, we get calls and we're like, we've got a great project, but I can't build it. And so then we start looking for reasons,
For you, those of you that don't know me, I was Boise City Treasurer for 30 years. And one of the reasons during that time that Boise City didn't issue very many CID or LIDs was you had to get the approval of, at least politically, you had to get the approval of the people that were in the neighborhoods. If you went and slammed an LID down on them, you were probably going to lose votes in your next go around. But the ones that they had, there wasn't the growth we have now. So those LIDs were mostly for improving old sewer lines or for those kind of things that were in existing communities. And they just, for Boise, it was mostly the politics of slamming one of those down on the people in those existing neighborhoods. And now the growth is starting to change that perspective because you're not slam dunking people on it.
And it is done a lot in other states.
very much. So see, we have different tools, but similar tools in other states. And I don't have it on this slide, but if you look at the numbers, it's staggering. I think in over the last 15 or so years, Florida, which of course has been a very high growth jurisdiction for a long time, has issued about $15 billion worth of new money bonds, meaning no refinancing, pulling the refi out, just for private development. Texas, I think, was a little bit under that, not much. Colorado, same. So the other high growth states had been using these and really developed the tools pretty well. You're just seeing Idaho take off. You're just seeing Utah take off. And so these tools, that's why I'm saying I think you'll see a lot more of it because of where you are in the growth cycle.
And is it Melrose? Is that
That's
similar to-
California.
Is that
That's
same
California.
thing? That's
And
LED
it's like a
similar.
CID. It's like a CID.
Councilor Nielsen?
Our LIDs, I know it's limited to a boundary,
Mm.
but like an impact of this development would occur on the state highway. Are those funds available to do state highway projects? So like it crosses over jurisdiction. Does that take any sort of extra, I guess, hearings or approvals, or does the city have the jurisdiction to do that and then the highway district has to build it? How does that work?
I'm not going to, so I'll tell you a little bit. Yeah, I'll let her talk about what the highway districts.
The legal side.
require. But I will tell you that we build offsite infrastructure all the time. And in Avamore, we've got an agreement with ACHD. No, it may even be the Idaho Department of Transportation, where we had to write them a check for $7 million so that they would put some infrastructure in, and the CID is paying for that. So you can do it, but it has to benefit the project. So a project can't pay for infrastructure that doesn't benefit the project. And so if you have, let's say you're putting in a stretch that benefits a number of different properties, you would just need to identify the benefit to a particular, project, and then that project could, pay for it.
Thank you. And kind of where I'm going with that is we have the ITD proportional share that we collect, right? So it seems like this may tie into that, but that also may interject the first legal challenge that we get to that scenario.
I believe it can be, in looking at it, it does have to be some sort of local taxing district like ACHD. This works well with them. We'd have to look into doing it more for the ITD type improvements because they don't typically fall under, you don't think of, they're not a local taxing district. ACHD, the sewer lines, anything like that, Star Sewer and Water, that all works great. It's not a problem, but ITD, that's something we'd want to look into a little bit more and see if there is a way to make that work with them.
Are you familiar with the City of Stars agreement with ITD to collect funds?
I am.
So yeah, just curious if that would be considered local since we collect it.
And we run the projects.
It might be.
Yeah.
That's a really good
'Cause
question.
we did
Yeah.
that section from Canyon to the Star Road using those funds
Yeah.
on there ourselves. So, and our engineers and everybody worked with ITD and got a firm to design it, and we managed the project and bid it out and everything.
That is
So-
a really good question.
So that's one.
Look into it. Yes.
Hey, So he wasn't going to be here tonight. He was,
Yeah.
he was going to be online, but I do have I'm going to ask a question that may be a tough question, Randy, and I'm not trying, I just want to ask, well, no, yours is a good question. Might not be a good one. We talk about keeping the prices lower on the houses. How do we assure that it's going to happen by putting this in place and not having you inflate the prices of the houses still to gain more money for yourself in the pocket? I didn't know how to ask that nicely. It sounds kind of ignorant, but I mean, from your perspective, how does that work
The
when we
public
talk about
wants
this?
to know that.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and we have analyzed that for sure. We've compared other taxing districts, property taxes to other comparable neighborhoods, and we don't feel like our increase will be kind of a slight increase, but not a dramatic increase. Plus, we have a number of lots in phase one already under contract. There'll be a number of them closing over the next 2 months, and each one of those builders has given their consent to be a part of this LID. So they've analyzed it also to see how it may impact their home sales. And none of them have expressed any.
But I mean,
Sorry.
how are you going to keep, I guess I guess my thing is the selling point is you don't have to add in an extra $40,000 on the price of a house because we're going to do it in the LAD and we're going to collect it on the back end over a 30-year period of time, right? How do we make sure that we're not adding that extra $40,000 for your pocket and still collecting the
That he's
Yeah,
getting
on the
paid
back.
twice, that he's getting paid once in the
Right.
price of the
See what I'm
house and once
saying?
in the, right.
Because right now, under this circumstance, you would build it, if this wasn't going to be there, you'd build it into the price of your lots already. How do we assure that we're not getting this double taxation, I guess, in a way, for the same infrastructure for everybody?
Yeah, so it's really market-based, and I think it goes back to what Pam was saying earlier about the cost of infrastructure right now. The cost has jumped dramatically just in the last 2 or 3 years. And this gives us the opportunity to lower that cost over the entire project. I mean, we're concerned, we want the project to move with certain velocity in terms of sales. It doesn't do us any good to sit on the product out there. So we're not motivated to really jack the prices up, to slow down sales. We want sales to move.
One more thing. I just want to, so I get that, but when it's market-based, when the market's coming out of California with this incredible amount of cash, the local guys have no option.
Yeah.
So how do we correct that? Knowing that,
You build more,
well, but you could only build as much as you could handle,
right?
right?
But
In all of the infrastructure. But I'm just trying to figure it out because these are questions that'll come up. And I want to be able to be educated on, be able to answer how do we,
We just had a very, very long discussion, not Randy, but a group of interested people in the state with the Idaho Statesman editorial board who hates us, if you haven't noticed. And I think we may have kind of showed them, how it works and how we aren't collecting. The buyers may be coming in from out of state. The builders aren't. The builders have land prices, across all developments within the valley and outside the valley. They have to make their numbers work too. And so the first thing that we do, I start putting together bond sizings. I send them over to my clients, and our clients have to go talk to the builders because the builders are going to say yes or no. They're looking for the cheapest lots they can find to put their product on, and they know what's going on in the market. So if we came in and we were so far out of market or, caused a problem, they let us know. They tell us. They do tell us. And they feel like,
I think that's really key though, because things do happen at market.
Yes.
And what we're talking about here is, let's say you do an LID, but 90% of everybody else doesn't, but you're all still selling at the same market. So what the mayor's talking about is your margin. And you get the advantage of adding that margin in right up front, while everybody who buys those lots and those homes gets to pay for that over time. And so it does end up being twice. And so I'd be curious, if during the hearings as part of conditions of approval and stuff like this, that there is a per lot deduction off of market that gets applied.
The only problem is it's hard to show that because sometimes, and
Sorry, I want to disagree for just a
Sure.
minute, and then you can tell me where I'm wrong, because
Okay.
I love to be wrong.
okay,
Honestly, I do. Because it's a flat,
right.
these guys don't believe me.
No.
It's a flat fee.
It is a
And it
flat.
stays that way through the entire thing. So you can absolutely take that off right up front.
Right.
And that way, if somebody's able to pay that off directly, then
And here's the other thing. When you drive through Harris Ranch or Avamore, it feels different. That money doesn't always go into lowering the lot price. Sometimes it goes into amenities. So there are some developers who spend that on amenities. There are some developers that spend it on a combination of lowering, keeping the lot price low and amenities. I mean, it comes out in a million different ways. Because I've heard, that's one of the comments that we hear across the country is, well, show me your lot prices. Sometimes we can show you the lot prices. Sometimes we just have to let people say, so if you look at the villages in Florida, it is for the past 20, 25 years been the #1 selling community in the country for 20 straight years. Every single home has a special assessment on it. And if you look at the amenities are phenomenal. You're in the villages when you're there. People move in from all over the country, probably all over the world, to the villages because of what it is. When these guys go out and shop these projects, they have to justify the cost of those lots and the cost of those taxes to the people that are buying. And it's not just that we have something in, that we have something in the, what do you call it? That we have something in the title report that shows that there's a tax on the lot. The builders are required to sit down with the purchasers, and every purchaser has to sign a piece of paper that says this project has a $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 assessment on it before they close, before they buy the lot. They have to be informed or they can go back, and we have to keep a copy of those. So it is a process. And I think if you start something, you're going to see a whole bunch of little playing around. As soon as you have if you have a set rule, we have to see your lot prices or this, then all they're going to do is if somebody wants to get around it, they're going to say, okay, builder, we'll sell you the lot prices for this, but you've got to put in this, this community infrastructure. We're not going to pay for it. Money's fungible. It's too easy to mess with.
Just trying to find ways so my kids could actually buy houses in this area. Because I don't really care if more people moved in,
Right.
out of state.
Right.
It's the ones that are growing up here that don't have a
I
chance.
agree.
And
That's-
so if we
that's-
continue to add and add, it's never going to happen.
Well, and I think that statement, money is fungible, is really key. And that's where you're driving toward. Because there are things that we can do as the government body to take this money and make it non-fungible. And that's what I'm looking at. I mean, we're going to require every developer, our code requires it, to do certain amenities anyway.
Right.
And so, when you do the apples to apples comparison, if you bring an auditor in and say, let's use standard costs and let's use market rates and things like that, what's going to pencil out in the end is his margin's going to be better because he got cheaper financing. That's end of story. That's what we're talking about here.
And generally, I don't hear many citizens in town saying, let's speed up the growth. That's not a common sentence I hear.
Right. And it is.
And by the way, I'm in favor of cheaper financing,
Right.
but I'd like to see that benefit the community. And I think that's the intent, is to benefit the community.
My drum roll on cost is the only way we can get costs down is to have more product out there. You know, it's,
We've done our fair share, I
think
promise.
too. But yeah, more, but cheaper financing and more houses, more rooftops, are going to bring it down faster than anything.
And an election in November, hopefully.
And
I was saying, going back to your earlier question there, I think that you probably could do an LID district to cover improvements on the state highways because it's the city forming it. Back to your prior questions.
Thank you. All right, did you want to talk about this one a little
okay,
bit?
we'll talk a little bit about this
I
one.
know we're going a lot over a half hour, but it's very interesting, honestly.
I don't get that a lot, so thank you. Wow.
We're special.
I know. I'll take what I can get. So and most of you or all of you are probably familiar with this project. We're talking about, you know, adding another 232 homes to the various styles and types, and about what do we have? 37 commercial acres with quite a bit of open space. So what we are asking for, or what we are asking you guys to think about, is to create a single LID over this entire piece. We looked at different options, whether, you know, we wanted to try to break it down, but financing costs has a cost, and if we were to break it down, that would drive up costs and negate some of the benefit. So I think we're looking at a, you know, request of a single district. We still have about $7 million worth of infrastructure to put in the ground. We've already put in about a little over 3 million, so it'll be over 10 million, you know, once we've got everything in. That includes, or this includes, dry utilities, which are not eligible. One of the first things that we do is put everything down on paper and say, okay, what can we pay for with an LID? What can't we pay for with an LID? A lot of the times there's just infrastructure costs in there that don't work. And then the other issue is whether or not we've got the bonding capacity to actually, you know, get the number we need. And that varies by project.
So when I look at the signalization on this one, are we just talking the one on Highway 2026, or we're talking two
Both signals.
for that price?
Yeah, both signals. The one at Shendon and what's left of the one that has to be done at Star and Inspirato.
So I'm just going to say that it's eye-opening to me, because the one that we're looking at working on down at Palmer is about $2 million by itself. One.
For Highway 40.
Highway 44, 5-lane segment. So that 5-lane segment on Shendon and there, I mean, how do you verify the numbers, I guess, to make sure that we're
These are engineers' estimates. So
okay.
And so one of the
Just telling you
things,
what we just went through it.
$2 million.
$2 million.
That's
So-
a shocker to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So double check that.
yeah, we
Yeah.
have to, one of the things that we have to do, and I'll get into that, is after we form the district, but before we issue bonds, we have to go out to bid. So we have to know the answer to your question before we issue bonds.
Okay, so is it required to be public works bidders for this or not?
It's
You're going through the public bidding process.
correct.
Okay, the same thing.
You would
Okay.
ask the city ultimately to assign us the process to help take it off of your plate.
Right.
Okay.
But the developer works
Right.
closely with the city doing the entire public works 3-bid process, newspaper,
Right.
everything.
We can minimize, you know, all the effort that the city would technically have to go through under the statute. There's a way to mitigate that so that you all don't have additional duties. We can talk about that too.
Thank you.
Sure. So this is the project, and this is some of the infrastructure has been started and put in along in here. And then we have remaining infrastructure that has not been started. We just kind of wanted to give you an overview of where we are. And here's our $1.6 million stoplight.
No, that's the same. No, there's two stoplights.
Stop too. Right.
There and
There's
over
a-
on Star
right.
Road, right?
There we go.
Yeah.
The one on Star Road, we're with Inspirato Phase 1 and Star Point Phase 1. We're putting in all the poles and the lights, but the ACHD has agreed to come back in and do signals at some point in time. We're suggesting to do it now.
Yep.
so that it enhances the commercial property.
Thank you.
This may or may not be relevant, but, and I'm just more for my curiosity maybe. But as I remember the Inspirato development coming, Rick and Christy Bean's property there was right across from the park as we approved it.
Correct.
It looks like it shifted to me. Is that safe to say? Or did that change?
No, it's never changed.
See where it's just past their property now?
Yeah, I'm having a hard time seeing the lines there exact. It's.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't show the aerial
Yeah.
that he's talking about. It is right across from their property,
Yeah,
right there, and that's where the
It looks
park,
like the
that's where the
park
park
missed
is,
it.
right there. Park's right there.
okay, it just looks like, I assumed it was by the dip. Okay, thank you. I'm protecting our citizens that I feel had an input in that.
I walked it with Rick and Christie, so, yeah, they're happy with it.
Perfect.
Mayor Todd.
So what is the process?
Ms. Jennifer has a question, sorry.
Sure.
Like for the building, everything that is in an LID, is it all built? Like, is there a timeline of when it has to be built, or is it?
It's to the advantage of the developer and builder to get it built as quickly as possible. So in terms of the public infrastructure, if we issue bonds for the public infrastructure, federal tax law gives us 3 years. We have to be able to say at the time that we issue the bonds that we believe the infrastructure can be built within 3 years. We can go over that, but at the time of issuance, we need to reasonably believe we can get it built in 3 years.
Thank you.
So absolutely. So the process is the developer, in this particular case, most of the cases, you all can initiate an LID on your own, but that's generally not what we're talking about. We're talking about the developer initiated is going to bring to you a petition. It's going to contain information required in the statute. It's going to give you an overview of the boundaries of the proposed district, of the infrastructure to be constructed, of the intended uses of the project. And then it'll give you some financial information as to what we anticipate the burden on the taxpayer to be, what we think that will be on an annual basis, and then the length of period we think that the bonds will be out. So there's quite a bit of information typically in these petitions. Once we've given that to you all, we let you noodle on it, and in the background, we're working with whomever you point us, to work with to get the public bidding documents in order. We're going to need an engineer. That can be an engineer that's working for the city or appointed by the city. I anticipate that your engineer is probably busy, and you're not going to want to mess with that. So
can we use, what's it called, a master list? What's the list called?
Our on-call services list?
So can we utilize those folks for something like this?
I
Yeah,
don't know why
okay.
you couldn't.
We don't have to put that out to bid to try to, okay.
So we would be putting together that public bidding document and getting everything ready to go. If you're inclined to move forward, you would pass a resolution of intent to form the LID. That kind of sets everything in motion. There's some notice requirements that the city would have to comply with, publication and letters to the property owners, which in this case would be the petitioners. At that point, we would hold a public hearing, and if you all were inclined to approve the LID, you would have a resolution approving the LID. We would then work with the engineer to finalize the public bidding process, review the public bids, present those to the city council for award of the contract. Once that contract has been awarded, then we can get with the city engineer to create the assessment roll because we know what the costs of all those components are going to be. And we would spread those costs or a portion of them across the property. So if we came back and we found out that it's, $15 million to complete that, obviously all those costs are not going to be borne, by the property owners in the form of a tax, because the properties just couldn't bear it, and we couldn't sell the bonds either. So that's something that we work out with with your engineer. Then we have a 15-day notice period to the property owners, letting them know what the assessment's going to be on the property, and we have another public hearing approving the assessment roll. Once we've done that, we can go out and issue the bonds, and then the builder will start constructing the infrastructure. And how that works is typically, and this is, we're doing this in a number of, in both Avamore and Spring Valley, the bond proceeds go into construction fund. The contractors start working, the contracts, or the contractors start working, and then on a monthly basis, they're going to submit their invoices, their lien waivers, all that documentation to the administrator of the district, which we can talk about in a minute. And the administrator and the engineer review all the documentation, sign off on it, and in a determined format, send the request for payment to the trustee of the construction fund. And then that trustee at the bank would release those funds to the contractors. It's a pretty efficient system, but there are costs associated with the engineer, and there's some costs associated with the admin. So we can talk about that. So LID admin, this can be done a number of different ways. The city can handle all of it. You don't have to involve any outside parties if that's the route you want to go. And you look at Harris Ranch, the city does a lot. Really, they do the administration for whatever reason of that CID. Harris Ranch or Spring Valley and Avamore have both decided they don't want anything to do with it. They have outside administrators. Basically what it entails is just what I was describing. It's going through, making sure that the payments are made on a regular basis, that things, that the contractors continue to work, that we meet the 30-day requirement imposed by the statute to pay for public infrastructure contracting. The assessment role is a little bit different. That is essentially what happens is Ada County will ask once a year what the amount of the assessments needs to be. And someone has to track that to the parcels. And so they will put together a by parcel, an exact amount that's needed that particular year to meet the debt service requirements of the bonds. It varies very, very little. It's a couple of dollars here and there. What will vary a little bit more is your admin costs, because we will tack administration costs onto the special assessments. It's not a lot of money, but it typically, that's above the bond amount. It's not a lot, but it is above the bond amount. So it can be, I think what we were looking at was probably $100 or less a year. And then the developer, so those costs are paid for through the assessments. And then before the assessments kick in, the developer typically writes those checks with the understanding that the developer will get paid back once the project is cash flowing down and once the assessments are meeting the needs of the operational needs on an ongoing basis of the LID, then any overage would be used to reimburse the developer for the out-of-pocket that they have at the front end. typically. This is a typical assessment roll tracking where we've got a parcel number. In this case, we've actually got a district. But a property owner can get on there at any time and find out what they're owed. If they want to pay it off, they click something, they can write a check to the county. All the money goes to, is managed by the county. I need to double check that with a payoff. It might actually go through directly to the trustee. But it's managed. It tells them what their principal and interest payments are, if there's any penalties because they're late, any other penalties, the total amount due and when it's due. So typically there's something online like this where the property owner knows what the score is at all given time. That also helps the title companies. If you're doing a CID, you are required to have this information, not necessarily in this format online, but you're required to have certain documentation online. You're required to have a website. And with the LID, they're not that, it's not that rigorous yet. So you don't have to go to this much detail. It's nice to have it. So do you guys have any question on the process?
Yeah, just real quick
Sure.
on the assessments, as on here, it just shows it twice a year. Is there also the option that these are paid as just part of the regular mortgage payment? Or are these separate twice a year?
Some of the mortgage companies will impound because it is a tax. And I don't know if all of them do, but I'm just not sure.
Okay.
I'll have to check on that because that's a good question. But it's certainly, I would think they would because it's a tax.
Okay.
So it may be paid monthly by people.
Any questions? That's a lot of information. Okay.
So when it comes back to the administration, you gave an example of somebody who uses a third party and you gave examples of others that don't. What is the recommendation? We're a smaller city. We got a lot going on. If something happened like this, would you recommend our council do that, or would you recommend there be a third party?
It's a personal decision, and you might reach out to the cities. I have to be kind of careful. We do the administration for Eagle. So it's self-serving for me to tell you, you should really hire us. It's a personal decision. I don't know why Boise has chosen to do it themselves. I haven't had that conversation with them. In other jurisdictions, it's hit or miss. It's not my favorite hat trick. We started doing it because the city of Eagle did an RFP and was looking, they didn't want to do it. And the responses that they received, they didn't feel were satisfactory. So they reached out to us to ask us if we would consider doing it. We do it in other jurisdictions. We said, yes, we're doing it.
I was going to say, may I ask the Boise guy?
There we go. Okay. He may know the Boise answer. You may have the Boise
And
answer.
he lives in Star, by the way.
Yeah, I live in Star now. I saw the light and moved to it. But because I was working with Boise City when they issued the CID for Harris Ranch and was involved in the setup, basically it boiled down to we had the staff, we had the time to do it. It was just another task. We spread it among our engineers, city engineers, and it was just one more area we were accounting for. And after the setup didn't take that much time. Now, in talking to the person who handles it in the last few years since they've had those litigations, he's been sort of a pain in the neck with that stuff going on. But Boise was the size that we could handle it and just didn't want to spend the money outside and keep the costs down, thereby keeping the costs down.
Any further questions there? Anybody?
And if you have any questions, I'll leave cards. Feel free to call me. You can call me about questions on this project, questions on LIDs or CIDs in general. I'm happy to.
So just just so I'm clear, so the process, if one of these were to get started, would be Randy's group would send us a
Petition.
request? Is that what this is?
It's a petition. No, this
Or a
is a
petition, I mean.
finance plan. What I've given you is a finance plan. It just outlines what his request is going to look like.
he'll
So-
give us the request, and then we'll take it.
The
All of this.
petition is, I mean, and here's the truth. The petition's expensive to draft. And so if you say, no way, we're not doing this, then he's not going to ask us to draft a petition. If you're comfortable with him taking the next step, going to the next step, so we would like some idea of what your thoughts are, either now or, sometime soon after you've had an opportunity to kind of talk amongst yourselves about what direction you want to go in, and that will give him some idea of what to tell us.
So do we need to,
You don't have to have
we
a
can't make a
formal vote.
decision, obviously, here.
No, it's not we don't need a formal vote. You can call tomorrow and go, yeah, we're generally inclined to proceed, or next week or the week after. Or
Well, let
whatever.
me ask you a question, being an attorney in land use, right? Because Chris isn't here. He had another meeting tonight since we threw this in there. Is it better for us to discuss this at a council meeting and take a vote on saying, yes, move forward with your petition? Or just discuss it and then we could just get with Sean and Sean could reach out to Randy on,
Sorry to interrupt.
no, that's okay.
Yeah, I don't think, because you don't really have much to discuss in front of a council meeting yet. You do, of course, if you have more than, I'm not sure, I think there's 4 or 5 of you on your city council. If you've got the quorum, you guys can't all be emailing about this, having meetings. So something where you could have another work session and just have another informal discussion where you sort of hammer this out. We're welcome to come back again in a short amount of time to talk to you some more, to answer more questions, because I know this is just a ton of information dumped on you all at once. But I don't, from, operating a city perspective, you should not just go out and, go get drinks after this and decide what you want to do here all together.
If there's a couple of these guys that drink, we're in trouble. It's all coming to an end.
Or tea tomorrow.
So I guess give us a couple days of noodle on this and stuff. And because I know I have more questions that keep coming. I don't want to keep asking them because we'll keep going. But
Or you could come together, just get your clerk all a list of the questions that you've sort of each individually come up with. We can
Circulate
come
them,
back.
we'll respond.
okay,
So
Councilman Nielsen.
I just did a simple model. For developer A and developer B. Developer B has an LID. Homeowner A and homeowner B. Homeowner B buys in the LID, home under the LID. If we assume basic cost for acquisition, improvements, and finance charge, just for the land, and then assume a home price, market rate sale. Gross margin for developer A in this model is 30,000. The gross margin for developer B is 45,000. So a little bit of improvement for the developer. Great. We say that each developer sells the equivalent home for 400,000. 30-year mortgage principal and interest is $773,000. When it pays out, if we say $400K at 5%, 30-year bond on homeowner A is nothing because they're not in the LID. 30-year bond, $30,000 at 5% for homeowner B is $58,000. So the homeowner pays $58,000 more. The developer avoids those costs. And I don't have his cost avoidance in the model, right? But the margin is 15,000. So it's a pretty significant shift of money and that onto that homeowner, and a pretty significant benefit to the developer up front. So I think that it's on us if we want to consider this, what's fair, right? And that's what we'll be asking you to help come up with.
Okay. That's the numbers guy.
And I guess the other thing, as far as questions go, we're also, because you can't meet all together, we're happy to sit down and have individual one-on-one meetings. We can do that.
It is not called a serial meeting if anybody tries to say that, because you're
It
not
is
meeting with
not.
each other.
And we don't have to share what
Right.
everyone said in our meeting.
So I suggest we sit down and think about it and get some questions together and get them together on by Monday. I mean, this is, yeah, if that's okay. And then we can somehow funnel them through Sean or Jacob or whatever to you guys on that. I do appreciate you coming out and talking about it because it is
Absolutely.
interesting. I mean, it's a different
It's
concept that we have.
interesting.
So, all right. Any further questions, Evan, before we move on to the next phase?
I'll just thank you. It was really informative.
Okay, we need to take 5 minutes, I was told. So we'll come back at 7:50 on here. So thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, cool. It's 7:55. We're gonna continue this workshop. We're gonna move on to our building code updates. And I think Ryan's gonna finish off with what he started in our last meeting, I think in November. It's been a little bit with the holidays and stuff. And then we'll see how far we get, because I don't want to be here real late. We're gonna have to do another one anyway for Sean to finish discussing his updates.
Thank you, Mayor. So if you will turn in your packet, and I apologize, there's no page numbers on it, to the section that says building code updates. And this is the municipal code update packet. There's municipal code updates on it. And I would say you are approximately maybe 7 to 8 pages from the back. So we're almost done. It says building code updates. Is it more than 7? Oh, you know what? Sorry. Yeah, 7. Yeah, all right.
1, 2.
Okay, so we went through most of what's in the front, so we won't revisit those items. So we're just going to we can kind of do, when we meet together again, we can kind of do an overview of everything, but we've been kind of getting, I'm sorry. Yes. That one, yeah. All right. So the first thing, so we're now talking building code. We've been discussing building code and several updates to the building code here recently. The first one that we would like to recommend is that we've been working with Victor and the fire department on significantly, and it is 715 of the building code. And so heat detectors are currently not listed in our building code. We are proposing that we create a section E of 715, and we are requesting or proposing that we require heat detectors. And so let me give a little bit of background to that. We have learned from the fire department that a lot of the fires that they're responding to recently start in the garage area, and the garages have become so tight that by the time the fire penetrates the firewall and gets into where a smoke detector goes off and it activates so that the residents of the home say that there's a fire and they call 911 and the fire department responds, they've already got a fully engulfed home. And the fires a lot of times are started because everything that we're doing now is lithium ion. So all of these cordless weed eaters and drills and lawnmowers and snow blowers and you name it, those things have a high propensity to cause fires. And so that's a lot of the fires that Chief Victor has said they've responded to. So these heat detectors are a fairly efficient option to put in the garages. They plug directly into the smokies within the house. And when they hit a certain temperature, and Victor can certainly give you all the specifics, it then triggers the smokies inside the house. And so we actually have been talking to a lot of the developers and the builders already. And when they go in and buy these in bulk for their homes, it's like $20 to $25 a house. So it's very cost efficient for them. Our sister city in Mountain Home just passed an ordinance and is mandating this right now. And so we are kind of using their ordinance that they just passed as kind of a guide, and we are proposing that. I'll give you another example of where these are going to be good is we have the development that we just looked at a couple council meetings ago over here at Hamlin and 44. Those are 3-story apartments, garages in the bottom. So you've got living space above them. We also have Cranefield that has the same situation, garages in the bottom, living above. That's going to be extremely helpful in those situations to have those heat detectors.
Councilman Nielsen has a question.
Councilman Nielsen.
My question, it
Yes.
just seems reasonable. Can we just say yes and move on?
Sure.
Just in the interest of time.
Sure.
You're all interested in it.
Any discussion?
I just had one question. How often is a false alarm because of heat in a garage an issue?
Yeah, if I'm
In a
gonna,
mountain
I
home,
got my heater running.
right, if,
So first off, I'm impressed because my deputy fire marshal over here listens to what I say. No, so right now we don't know because there's not a lot in currently. This is something new, but it's a rising temperature. So 175 and rising is what we look at.
175.
175 and rising, yeah.
It's not gonna get to that in the summer here. It's pretty hot, but not that.
Right, right. And we are
Curious.
seeing, and we are seeing not just the Lith Pro batteries, which is a ton of them, but also, garages are designed today as shops. They're not where we just park our cars. And so we're seeing a lot of combustibles with rags from staining and things like that. So I wanted to be the first to do this, but Mountain Home beat us. So
Moving on.
Moving on.
Moving
Thank
on.
you.
Okay, section 716, this goes to our electrical guidelines. Our current code states that wiring, commercial, educational, institutional, and industrial electrical shall be wired as follows. Wiring to be in a raceway, armored cable, or approved by the inspection department. This was put into our codes many years ago by a previous electrical inspector, and it really makes STAR different. Our current code, the way that it is written, determines when a raceway and armored cable should be used. So it is the proposal that we strike this sentence from our code and get rid of that requirement and allow the current electrical code and building code to govern when raceways and armored cables are used. This code was adopted by ordinance number 261. And so we are proposing that we strike that same verbiage from that ordinance as well.
Okay.
Any questions or anything on that? We have also discovered that going through our code, that the city of Star has not adopted the International Fire Code via ordinance or resolution, and it's not written into our code. So, oops.
Another easy, yeah.
Actually, if you go back through meeting minutes, we did that under Mayor Chad Bell.
It's not part of our current code. So it might,
Well-
in the minutes, it might have made it, but it has not been codified as part of our current ordinances.
We're just.
No, what I'm saying is there was an up or down vote and it was we did, but we can do it again.
So,
Yeah, the council did that already. Yeah,
yeah.
Creamy.
no worries.
So what we are proposing is that we would make section 718 the adoption of the International Fire Code. And we would utilize the language on the next slide, basically just saying that we do hereby adopt the current edition of the International Fire Code as adopted by the state of Idaho, including any revisions thereto as may periodically be adopted by the state of Idaho, and including all applicable appendix chapter standards contained therein, And so we need to get that in order to provide the significant enforcement opportunities that Victor needs, as does the city.
Aye.
Can't vote.
So then
I like it.
Okay.
so then that basically just means that we would add a new section 718 and then we would make a section 719. So that's all we would do there.
Mayor
then
Chadwick,
I'm sorry.
just a question. So I submitted a couple of building code suggestions. I don't see them in the packet. Are they not being considered or inadvertently left out?
Sean, I believe, has those in his section that he's going to talk through. The ones that Kevin submitted. that we talked about.
Well, building code, municipal building code, or, I mean, which ones?
I know what he's talking about.
I didn't specify which building code, but the building codes for in the city of Star specifically to address scenario in the garages where they put furnaces, water heaters, things like that.
Oh.
The subfloor extends out from the home. The water heater sits on that. Water heater has a problem. It floods into the home. It totally negates the purpose for putting the water heater in the garage. So things like that, to kind of separate that and protect our.
We have another before, we'll get that on the next one. He hasn't had a chance to look at all the stuff that you've had on here.
Did I submit too many?
Huh?
No, I'm just kidding.
No.
He's got,
He's got them, but we'll get him in a
We'll go
packet.
back and
We
look
have
at
one more
Okay.
meeting at least,
talking
Kevin.
about that.
Okay.
We'll have one more meeting at least to go over more of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you recall, we did a survey as we started the process to update our code. We asked a lot of the members of our community to comment.
It's like
on the
40 something.
various things through their code. If you went through that survey, it's chicken this and chicken that and chicken everywhere. There's 60 pages here and most of them are chicken. This is probably the number 2 call that I get at the city. Number 1 is weeds, number 2 is chickens. And when I say that I get, people want chickens.
So it's not complaining about chickens, it's wanting chickens.
They're wanting chickens. Yes, and our code right now is very specific on when you can and cannot have a chicken. In fact, our code currently restricts, I would say, 90% of the homes, maybe even 95% of the homes in our city from having chickens. So what we are proposing is that we rework our definition of farm animals. We remove chickens out of farm animals. We replace that with roosters. Okay, that updates our current definition. We are also proposing basically, and that's basically what is in here. We're proposing that from a city perspective, that not only do we allow chickens, but that we also update and we kind of get a little bit more on what we do and do not allow within the city limits. And what we are seeing right now is that with a large outreach of people that want to have laying hens, as a city, I am proposing that we allow the laying hens because the HOAs are the ones that are going to eventually police this. Most of the HOAs have different ordinances and covenants on whether or not you can have a chicken. And so my proposal is, from a city perspective, we should allow them, let the HOAs police that, not the city police that. And now that we have a animal control group, that Chief Hessing and his deputies would also not have to police that. Those calls would go to the Humane Society. There's been lots of discussion on how do we control chickens, how do we this, how do we that. One of the cities that I did some research on, and I apologize, so if you can just take one of these and pass it down. One of our cities to our north, they allow chickens, but they have created a chicken permit application. And so I kind of put one together very briefly. It's on its way coming around. And basically it outlines the code with regards to a chicken, how many you can have, what the minimum property size is. So we're basically saying that the minimum property size should be 5,000 square feet, which basically means that most of the lots within the city of Star would be able to have that. You must provide no structure intended to house chickens is permitted within 10 feet of a property line. The enclosure must be in the backyard. Chickens are allowed to free range in the backyard only and must be kept within an area that is enclosed with a fence. No portion of the enclosed area is permitted in the front yard or side yard of any property containing a dwelling. All locations, pens, structures used to keep chickens must be in a clean and sanitary condition, free from odor, substance, all those types of things. It's unlawful to permit, you can't, I know on the farm we'd go throw the old pumpkins from jack-o'-lanterns out over there, and sometimes they'd sit for months, right? We're not going to allow them to to be fed and to have food sitting out there and decaying and rotting and causing smell, that then falls under some of our other ordinances that we can enforce. Dead chickens are not to remain along the premises longer than 8 hours. A permit's not transferable to another location or individual. The applicant shall pay to the city clerk a fee set by resolution of the council. The permit is valid until revoked or until it lapsed because of non-use for 1 year. Again, if it's a rental, they have to have a warranty deed or a permission from the property owner. No permit would be issued for a 2-family dwelling, a multifamily dwelling, an attached single-family dwelling, or commercial facilities. So that means the apartment complexes, attached townhomes, they would not be allowed per this permit. The permit may be revoked at the discretion of the code enforcement officer, chief of police, the mayor, or city council. And the council may waive the application for a person under the age of 18 who's raising chickens as a Boy Scout, Girl Scout, 4-H, or similar project.
Kevin has a question. Nielsen.
Maybe not so much a question as just a couple of comments. I like it. I think that I think people should be able to have some chickens on their property. I'm curious as to the fencing. Is the intent of the fencing to keep them within the fence?
Correct.
Because it's a common misconception that chickens cannot fly.
Right.
And chickens can fly.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if we should change that language to be like a portable enclosure. You see some of those things that, are on wheels that kind of roll along. People can move them around. But if our intent is to keep them contained, then a fence is not going to keep them contained.
You can clip one side of one chicken and it can't fly.
That is true. And then our permit needs to
So maybe we
maybe
require it
have
to
some
be
language
clipped.
with that. Yeah. So it's either fully enclosed or,
Or,
Or
either or.
I think it's also important that language is carefully watched here because roosters are chickens.
so I think, yes,
So I
you
think
are
it
right.
says laying hens.
I
right?
think we're
It-
trying to say laying hens.
I understand. And we've got hens and we've got roosters and we've got chickens. So I haven't read through it to make sure that all ticks and ties, but
Right.
you know,
No, you are correct.
Well, if you just put under, after hens, parentheses, chickens, so it can reference chickens all the way through there.
Yeah.
Or you could change it all to just hens, either way.
Yeah.
Our intent is not to have roosters.
Our intent is no
intent is not
roosters.
to have roosters.
Correct.
I have a problem with number 2.
That-
Like a personal problem.
The minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet.
No, swine of any kind are not allowed within the city limits.
Oh, you're on the other.
Oh, you're back here.
So can I finish on this real quick?
Absolutely.
Just I have a problem with it. Yeah.
So I was.
Yes. So it is,
Hold on before,
sorry,
before we go there. One more thing on chickens.
Okay.
I think that the permit and the code should say that the purpose of this allowance is for personal use only, that this is not a permit or a grant of license to then set up a roadside stand and sell eggs. We're not getting into agribusiness and the transfer of salmonella. People want to take that on for their own risk, but I don't think the city should be enabling that sort of thing where we've got a heavily regulated industry and this is, a serious disease problem.
so we would
Right.
just say something to the effect that they can't sell the eggs. It's these are for personal use only. Thank you. Mac.
I don't
Something
care if they want to
like
give them away to neighbors and stuff like that, but we're not setting up roadside stands and,
that. Okay.
You don't have a right to farm. in a
this isn't
subdivision.
granting a right to farm.
In a subdivision.
But you're allowing it in the entire city, so.
But it doesn't, the right to farm act doesn't apply in this case. The right to farm act only applies to adjoining properties to a subdivision, that they have the right to continue to farm without that subdivision impacting them.
So if I have a farm that's inside the city limits.
Well,
like
but it's
over
different.
here on, what's that street, Knox?
We're not setting up single-family residential units and lots to be farms.
So what about the ones that are already there is what I'm getting at.
Well, but the code, there's updated code here that talks about that.
It does. I didn't go through it, but we are just proposing that we just update our current code so that you can, if you do have larger lots or existing farms, that you still can maintain those within the city limits. Yes. Yes.
Just real quick on
chickens too. And I don't know the answer to this. And maybe the animal control, they'll do a different way. But when the eggs cost, when the egg cost went up, skyrocketed, we saw more and more chickens in the city of Star. Well, the problem is people go buy a bunch of chickens and realize they have roosters. So what we had is we had people putting roosters in boxes and leaving on random porches, and then police are dealing with it. So just know that this,
As long as it's not rooster gates.
I agree that, having a bunch of roosters in the city is not a good idea, but I don't know. More and more, I don't know how many people are actually gonna get chickens, but it sounds like quite a few want chickens. I don't know if what our animal control is gonna say about coming out and getting a bunch of roosters out of cardboard boxes on porches, but just so you know, that was a problem.
Chicken wings.
Really quick. So question is, so we get a lot of fires where they have a patio and they put their chicken coop under their patio. They then get the heating lamp and they put the heating lamp there.
Yep.
And they use the ones with the little gripper.
Yep.
That gripper gets loose, right, with vibration, falls into the bedding. Bedding's highly flammable. Then we have a chicken coop fire that extends up the back end of the house into the house. So
Yeah, fried
how
chicken.
do we? So how do we say it? Like, is it the chicken coop cannot be under a dwelling by the dwelling? You know what I mean?
I do. I know what you mean. I have one answer. I will refrain that for off the record. But I don't want to get into the point where we're outlining everything that, you know what I mean? But if you feel that that's necessary to put in here, I'm happy to put in here that it can't be under the porch or the patio or something
We see
like that. I'm totally fine with that.
in the valley maybe 2 to 3 a year because of that heat lamp.
I saw the damage report last year from Star, and it was $500,000 for the whole city for the whole year. I think you guys are doing a great job, and let them monitor their own needs.
Maybe what we can do.
So what he's saying, don't put another restriction.
Right. And I guess what I'm thinking maybe is there's probably some type of pamphlet out there.
I was just gonna say
that
maybe we do like a fire safety
uses-
pamphlet
yes.
for farm animals, chickens. Perfect.
Yep. And we could probably make that as part of the application. We hand it out. Okay.
So before we go to the swine,
Yes.
sticking with chickens, on this application,
Mhm.
do we need to add something about that they have received the HOA approval?
Well, that's up to them to get
Or
it.
is
I mean,
that-
I think we need to say, probably need to put on here, you must check with your HOA,
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
yep.
your CCNRs to see if you're allowed to have them, because this does not override an HOA's rule.
Right.
It just allows you to have them in the city.
Maybe that's just a disclaimer we add on there. This doesn't.
Disclaimer. Yeah.
So noted.
Because I don't want to be checking their rules or asking them to
No,
check.
It's not our job.
Present.
Yep. Nope. So noted. I got it. Great
And
idea.
then I guess we probably need to add something in the proposed code that there's this application that they're required to submit this application, right? in the
Correct.
Code,
Correct.
if we adopt that. And then
Yep.
do we have to do something? We'd have to update the license fee schedule. Is there any?
We just have to update the fee schedule. We will be bringing you a new fee schedule. Yes. That has this among others.
Will this have teeth for the chief to have to patrol?
Chief won't have to do it because we now have the Humane Society as our animal control agency.
Perfect.
So if a neighbor is complaining about a chicken and they know, like, I guess, what's the purpose of this application?
It's to provide the people with the information required to have chickens in your backyard.
So could we just
And it also gives us,
charge a fee for it?
well, absolutely charge a
Absolutely.
fee for it, because our staff we're going to have to, I think you need to, you have a record of where the chickens are, right? That they've been advised of these rules. They've signed the rules on here, right?
Yeah. And then if we do get into cases where we find chickens that aren't there, then we have the ability to come back. Is it going to stop everybody from having chickens? No, it's probably just a form for the honest person, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it really
Dog
is.
license,
But it's
really.
one more step that somebody has to go through to really stop and think about, is this what I really want to do? If I have to go and do this, we're just trying to make sure that if they're going to do it, there's a process in place for them to do it. I'm
It's
happy
no,
to.
I'm gonna just, Jennifer, it's no different than them being required to have animal licenses for their dogs.
Right.
It's the same
right.
thing.
Which we, I mean, we're getting better, but, a lot of people are not aware of the dog licensing. And
Oh, they just
so,
don't want to be aware. I hate to say that. They're just, lots of people, like myself, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't do a dog license until I became mayor. It's the first time I ever did it here, and I've had dogs the whole time.
I'll wait for
I've
that
been
day
here.
then.
yeah, me too.
So I'm just being honest. There's a lot, I mean, and I chose
We'll
not to
get
do
mine
dog.
tomorrow.
license.
And
We'll get
and
yours
the,
tomorrow. I'm
I
checking
threw
you
the
all.
$25 on there. Jennifer, that's just a random figure I threw. Whatever, it could be $3, it could be $5, it could be 100, whatever you guys feel is safe. I just threw 25 on there.
It's a good number.
And I think that's actually what our community to the north is charging.
So
Kevin?
And it's a one-time fee.
The one-time fee.
Yeah, they don't have to do it every year or anything.
It's
It's not
an
per
an-
chicken.
Annual, it's a one
No.
time.
A chicken license.
And then we'll have a one to every year, those chickens that are no longer laying eggs, we can have one heck of a chicken fry.
The other reason to have the,
Right.
Yeah.
the other reason to have this is so that when the neighbor does complain, that we've got a checklist here of what people
So
have agreed
to that end, can we have an agreement on here that when a complaint is levied, that they're agreeing to allow the Humane Society, Star Police, somebody to come onto the property to investigate?
Yes. That's pretty common.
Is that a
Thoughts,
required
Zach?
language or is that implied because it's a code, chief?
Typically, they won't go into a backyard or, well, you can talk.
So let me step back. So what we're talking about is us to investigate to make sure they're following the guidelines of the
Well,
chicken.
if there's a question from a neighbor,
There's a complaint from a,
I know 6 chickens aren't that many, but if they choose to not clean this thing in a year, it's going to smell like there's 200 chickens in that
We're gonna
backyard.
know. Yeah.
And there's the only thing worse than chickens is turkeys.
So how I would view that, I think that investigation is going to still be under animal
Chickens
control.
Yep.
Just like if they have a dog back there that they're not taking care of, it's the same thing. So animal control will have to go back in there. And I mean, obviously, if the people aren't going to let them back there, then we got to go a different route. We can't just force our way back in there. But I mean, there's different ways of how we can work that to the point where it starts becoming a misdemeanor, I guess, on how they're taking care of animals. Obviously, I've never had that done with chickens. But I'm sure animal control and us can find out exactly how it is. I don't know if we want to put in the city ordinance how that is. Maybe we look at other city ordinances around us that have it, and see what their verbiage is on how we can investigate those. Yeah, I don't even know where to start on.
how do we handle dog droppings? Dog stuff.
Would you just?
Do we have it? Do we have anything for
Right.
obnoxious smells like dog in the backyard?
Would you just follow your code enforcement policy to say we get a complaint, this isn't investigated and so forth?
That's what we would do. I've not had somebody call and, well, I've had one call because of the dog poop not being picked up. And then that was a simple call to them and they picked it up. I mean, I've never had something go further beyond that. So I
Part
don't
of our
know.
nuisance ordinance,
It
though.
would follow our nuisance ordinance,
Okay.
absolutely.
And that's what I was going to say. Probably at some point be a nuisance ordinance and get us involved in that. And I mean, I guess it depends on how far you want to push disturbing the peace, but go that route.
I'll do some research on it, Kevin, to see if what kind of language might be in there. Maybe work with Chris a little bit on
And
that.
I'm good if our nuisance ordinance is sufficient. I just, to make it easy is what I'm looking for.
Okay, absolutely. Yep.
okay, go to swine.
Okay, swine, Mr. Kevin.
So just so you know, we have been struggling with swine, and how to introduce it or how to, and the reason is that, yes, we have a lot of small 6,000, 5,000 square foot lots. We also have some 5 and 10 acre lots that are in the city that it might be appropriate to have more animals than a 6,000 square foot. So we got to look at the city as a whole, not just subdivisions.
You've called out sizes of lots, but still cut them out of every size.
Yes.
Why?
We don't want swine in the city limits.
Why?
What about the ones that are pets?
We-
What about the 4-H kids that you're telling don't participate? When I have a farm exemption for my property, why can I have a 4-H swine?
Do you have
You have a swine?
no,
I have had swine on my property and we raise swine for 4-H all through our kids' youth.
do you have an exemption on your property?
Yes.
So that's the first step is you exclude ag exempt properties because an ag exempt property is going to be over 5.01 acres.
Nope. You can apply for that every year.
Okay.
And if under 5 acres, you can apply for that same exemption under 5 acres.
Is there a minimum size?
No.
Okay.
You have to make $1,000 a year annually with your property.
So it's not the same exemption as it is for taxes, having an ag exemption?
Exact same, but the rules change as the property gets smaller.
Okay.
We'll have to look into that.
We'll have to look into
Yeah.
it. I will be honest with you.
Schedule F on your taxes.
One of the things that we are trying to get ahead of a little bit is the legislation that was brought before the House. Was it last session, Mayor? Where the legislature is actually trying to legislate this. And so we want to try to get ahead of that a little bit because the bill that came in basically said that no city or HOA should prohibit a homeowner from basically having a garden and having pigs, cows, goats in their backyard when used for food. And if we already have an ordinance in place, it allows us to preempt that. I don't know if that's going to get picked back up this next session, but the last thing we want is pigs in every subdivision.
I have no problem with
So-
lot sizes being limited, but when you have an ag exempt property like mine that's big enough to have that animal, we should make that rule according to those needs so that we can participate. in it.
We'll do some research on it.
Just so you know, we don't disagree with that. We just struggled on
I'd like
how
to see it
present it.
somehow.
So-
Maybe you do an ag exempt for a
Yeah.
half acre or more,
Maybe that's the answer is the ag exemption.
right?
And then,
Well, but-
and then have distance requirements from a property line to your,
Yeah, you can have all the
Yeah.
distance problem
yeah.
that you've had in other places in this, right? The 25 feet from whatever the property line, that's fine. We should figure a way to be able to have that.
You know,
Problem is, tr-
So, yeah, I was just going to say, give us some, this is your specialty.
oh, Jeff, go ahead.
And it would be for any animal, right? Any farm animal.
Any farm
Exempt.
animal, but
Yeah. if
But
there's-
swine being the only one that's cut out completely because all the others have options.
Mhm.
Okay.
Just the whole black line through the swine is a problem for my opinion.
Okay. No, I appreciate that.
So something we might consider is having something in our zoning ordinance where a neighborhood is built for the purpose of people who want to have animals, like horse property or agriculture property. And at that point, you know, like a half acre lot would be appropriate to have a couple of horses or, you know, 3 or 4 pigs, something like that. When you get a half acre lot in the middle of a subdivision where not everybody has that, I think we're asking for problems.
so one thing we could to do on that is like an average, the average lot size in a subdivision is a half acre. Then you wouldn't have that one rogue half acre lot amongst 5,000 square foot lots.
But subdivision needs, I think it needs to be a class of zoning is what I'm suggesting. And it might be, you know, we have R2
R2A.
and then we have R2A.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that it's an assumed thing that when you move into that area that
You have an agricultural option.
you've got the agricultural option. That's right. Outside of that, I would suggest it's like 5 acre minimum.
And then the HOA, they couldn't put in that chicken, that you can't have chickens in those in the HOAs.
In that-
on a-
in the
In
A-
those A ones. I'd love to have a chicken, but my HOA says no, and a lot of them do, you know, and so can't really do anything about that.
Yeah.
But if,
And therein lies the the conundrum because I have not enforced the chicken ordinance. And I've told people that when they call, I'm like, I'm not going to enforce it. People want to have chickens. We were living in a time when we need it. Is the chicken causing a problem? No, I just says they can't have chickens. Well, then quit peeking over your fence. So I have not enforced the chicken ordinance the entire.
We have a bee ordinance. Bees are a
So-
lot more dangerous than chickens. And we have an ordinance for the bees.
It's on your
Chicken might
phobia.
eat your bees.
So,
It does
All right,
say
let me do
here
some
about
research.
bees.
Well,
It does.
bees has a
No, yeah, but
separate
remember a
section.
Bees have
couple
their
years
own
ago, we
bees.
had an
We
action
put
ordinance.
it-
come
Said a
through
few years
for
ago.
bees Specifically.
right.
This is the shortest discussion we've ever had on chickens. I just want to congratulate us here tonight.
Yes, thank you.
for real.
Good job.
Yeah, well, for real.
Yeah, we've had some long discussions. We had a council meeting
Oh,
that took an hour, I think.
Oh, my.
More. It was-
So Ryan, I guess, let us go
Yes.
back and provide some more information, some more wording for you guys to talk about the pigs and the chickens, because now that we know what your
I would be fine
input is, that's what we're looking
limiting
for.
them to a youth project, something to that effect. I don't want to have pigs for me, but I want to have the option to have them for a youth project for somebody if I need to.
Okay. We have an exemption on there for that.
Yeah, and to that point, I think there needs to be a cap on the number of pigs.
Sure. They're same with the 1 horse per acre. or
Well, if we had a
whatever.
20-acre lot within the city, you could put a lot of pigs on that lot.
Yeah.
That creates a huge problem.
I will tell you that Sean and I have spent many hours on this. We have learned about Idaho pasture pigs in depth, because that kind of is what's led to this. We have a significant number of those on a property.
And what about the chickens with the chicken coops that, how do you explain, can you explain what we learned?
The
The chicken coops that the coop goes down.
the
and then-
biome farming or
Yeah,
whatever. it
there's a
is. So
whole biofarming.
I am going to do
Like,
some
you
research
can
on
move
that.
to notice if you want to do something like that. I mean,
Yeah.
the state charter for the purpose of the city is to plan for urban and urban-like development. That is our number one purpose in state law. And this really feels like it's deviating from that. So
It does, but also,
Diverse urban options.
those are not urban options. Those
and
have
you know,
never
you
been
know what's,
urban
you know what's really
options.
brought this up, and especially the swine, is when we annexed off of Joplin, what's the name of the subdivision?
Quick.
Stonebriar, the 10-acre lots that we annexed into the city
Yeah.
that provided us with our annexation path. Now you get 1 or 2 owners in there that want to have pig farms and want to have it, but now you're in the city. Now you got to write an ordinance to try to deal with that. And every, you know what I mean? It's not easy.
To your point.
It's
Yeah,
not easy.
It isn't.
And so that's, and also as we transition to the north, we're going to have more 1-acre lots and 2-acre lots that are in our comp plan that we want to have more agricultural type uses than you would have in a 6,000 square foot lot subdivision. So
Well,
it's,
if you have a family of 6 and they want to eat pork every single day, 3 meals a day, you can raise 5 pigs and do that for a year.
Really? That'll give me bacon for
Just
3
in
meals
case
a
you're
day.
wondering, Kevin grew up as a hog farmer.
That's why I wanted his opinion. I know
Yeah.
he's the expert. I just want bacon all 3 meals, so I need
but
5.
do we want to have 5 pigs in someone's
Well,
backyard?
the whole pig doesn't become
Have
bacon.
the acreage to cover that.
It's just the pork belly.
It can become sausage.
It
okay.
can become sausage.
No,
Is it 1 pig at a time or all 5 pigs at a time?
5 pig, you know what? Choose your own
Freezers.
adventure.
Freezers last a year.
Okay, I'll do some additional research and come back with some additional numbers, but Sean's right. That's what drove all this discussion. And we have literally beat our heads against a wall on this, because every time we change something, you're like, oh yeah, but how does that affect this? How does that affect this? And so
To be honest with you,
Victor, any
I don't
fire
even think we
issues with
considered
pigs?
4-H animals.
we
did
didn't consider that. That's the first
And
time.
that's a very good.
The hotter, the crispier.
It paid for a year of college for one child and a house down payment for another.
I think it's great. Yeah, I didn't We didn't even think of it.
All right, we ready to
with
go on
that.
the next?
Yeah,
one?
so that is it from my section. I do know, Kevin, if we come back to yours, I do know exactly the ones that you talked of. I thought for sure we put those in Sean's section. But if we didn't, I'll make sure they're in our next one because I do know exactly which ones you talked about. So,
All right,
but-
Sean.
Okay. Mine's not going to take too long. What's going to happen is Kevin and I are going to sit down and we're going to go over probably the most time consuming section of the code, and that's the build to rent subdivisions. Come up with some language, and then we'll bring that back at a later workshop. I want you to start at Article C, which I have up. Yep. I might have touched
As
it.
he's clicking it.
No, I'm not touching it now. No, I'm not touching it.
No, you're right there. Right there is where you want to be.
Yeah, please.
All right, you're on.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I think we're all loopy. Been a long day.
All right. Okay, so continuing on our excursion through the code. So Article C, additional commercial and office district standards. All commercial and office districts. So trying to address a few things in our downtown commercial zones. So the one is, so it's letter C, big box commercial, generally a single-story, single-use building over 50,000 square feet shall not be permitted unless approved by council. Now, why I picked that number, I don't know why we have 50,000.
50,000 or greater.
50,000 or greater. Oh, it says over, yeah. D, commercial buildings and centers, including shopping centers and strip malls immediately adjacent to State Street and Star Road, shall front the roadway with parking located in the rear. Single buildings may provide parking on the sides as approved by council. Direct access to these roadways shall be limited to avoid excessive access points. Existing alleyways shall be utilized when present. So we're looking at the kind of the downtown core where we have these somewhat shallow lots or parcels. And I just can envision another Fairview where you have all the buildings in the back and you have just a sea of parking lots. And especially the lots that have the alleys in the back, that we want to utilize those alleys for access and have these buildings have a nice streetscape along Star Road and State Street.
Is there a way to have them improve the alley as they develop, as part of their development?
They would have to, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we've got alleys going into the hair salon and Realty One and all that, but the alley's still a dirt road anyway.
Yep.
Right. And sorry, I'd like
Go ahead.
language that not just for existing alleys, but we favor the construction of alleys as part of their plan. Like if they're going to develop that, let's create the alley scenario.
Okay. I'm going to add as approved by ACHD or the Transportation District. Okay, I carried that same language. So if you turn the page on E, this is one of Trevor's good ones, new ones. Site improvements, irrigation and drainage ditches shall not be covered, tiled, or rerouted as part of any new commercial development unless specifically approved by council and applicable irrigation and drainage districts.
Are we encouraging them to not cover them?
Yes.
You want to explain a little bit?
We have a tiling ditches, I think, creates more of an issue for us in the long term, upstream and downstream for our groundwater supplies. When we're just pushing water, our aquifers here, and it was even stated in a water summit thing I was in, were created by our thousands of miles of irrigation canals that were developed in the early 1900s. And the more and more we continue to tile these things, the less recharge that we have available to our system.
Are they representing the aquifers that would be used for like for municipal or
Municipal aquifers aren't impacted. It's the ones that are all these folks on these 1
it's
acre
like, yeah,
lots.
it's like 30 to 50 feet.
It's about 70 feet down, 70 to
Yeah.
100 feet down. Yep.
Yeah.
In between that range.
And there can be a lot of
But it doesn't
circumstances
say that you,
where
they-
they might have to tell them, I mean, if they're right in the middle of a parcel,
Right.
but this gives the council the
So when
ability
they-
to look at that so it's not just an automatic.
Right.
right. We're trying to keep some of that. And here's some of the challenge that doesn't, even the artesians that are not artesian anymore, there is a challenge right now with these drain ditches. If you didn't have the water down here by Caldwell, for instance, right? The water, the Boise River would dry up without the drain water, without as much as being used up here for the Idaho Department of Water Resources folks. And these drainage ditches are delivering less and less drainage water down there. These artesians are drying up. The farms, the fields aren't being flooded.
Every one of our developments is required to maintain the water on site. We no longer discharge it into a drainage.
No, I get that, but that's the problem, right? That's before all that stuff was going down and there was plenty of water down here at the far end. Our agricultural communities on the other side of Caldwell, you know, the Notice, all those areas are not getting all the water that they should be getting in the long run, right? So we're having some challenges here with that. The evaporation, I've just found this out, is very, very, very small in these ditches, because that's a question I asked. Well, how much, because a lot of times you hear irrigation guys say, hey, we're losing water obviously to seepage and to irrigation, to evaporation, and we want to deliver it downstream. Well, you're not losing. It's very, very, it's a very, very small percentage. It's less.
Evaporate at the rate in the canal is the same as it would in the river, right?
Yeah. It's
Except
not
for the little
water.
bit of speed difference. I'm not too concerned about that.
But my thing is, we need to try to keep these ditches open, or we need to tile these ditches. We need to do something in order to make certain that we have water. I guess I am looking at this from a cautious standpoint in today's world for tomorrow, right? For the future.
Yeah.
People that want to argue about kids falling in these things and stuff, give me a break. We grew up with this stuff for 100 years like that. And
Yeah.
That's
people
the
die in
same,
them
but
every
that's the
year.
same safety, it's a different animal and the same safety concern that we're having with subdivisions and traffic, only it's water. It's all a safety
gets out of
issue,
the water.
right?
Yeah.
Like one safety issue, but not both.
So that's why that's there. If you don't want to do it, it's up to you, but I'm telling you, I'm going to continue to fight that fight because I think it's a problem. I think we're going to have a serious issue. We don't have a lot of that issue here in Star, but we contribute to the downstream issue by not allowing that aquifer to get recharged down for our folks between Star and Middleton.
Here, Chadwick.
Yep.
So has there been any in that information getting, has there been anything about like due to roads, like more concrete or pavement or anything?
It's
so
it's
that-
all of it. It's
just a
everything.
Yeah, so.
But remember, we didn't have all the roads and the pavement. We had but we had all these open ditches for 100 years that's created these aquifers up here, these shallow aquifers that everybody in. You look at it down in the southern part of Boise. They are not flood irrigating. The canals are all tiled. Every one of those houses, the city of Boise right now is running water lines to the houses down there because they cannot use their their wells anymore that are 60 to 100 feet deep because it's all dried up. Right? So take the proactive stance and saying, listen, let's keep them open. Doesn't say that they can't do it. It says it's got to get approved by council. Just don't assume that they're just going to be able to go tile that ditch just to make their project fit. I don't like that. I think that's a problem for us in the future.
If, for example, they absolutely have to be tiled because it's like right in the middle of it, right in the middle of a parcel, then we could require perforated
pipes,
in some cases.
But it's up to you as a council to decide that.
There's our options.
Well, can we add that in here? Well,
Well, but as a
not-
council, an applicable irrigation or drainage district. For instance, when we did the dog park over here, we didn't even think about this until
Sir?
Alan Funkhauser made us drill that pipe, that entire length of that, where the dog park is, just to bring in the groundwater that's seeping up to deliver down that drain ditch down further downstream, right? Because if we would have just tiled it, there was that thing would have just completely dried up and there'd been no water going downstream.
I think one of the things that comes to mind is, over the years as Star has built out, and I'm going to use Saddlebrook subdivision as an example because I lived there and I dealt with it as an HOA president for 9 years. We had a significant crawl space issue with water coming in, and hundreds of homes all along that canal dealt with that on an annual basis until that drainage ditch was tiled. So, there is a lot of water that comes out of those. There's no question about it. And so I think it becomes a real challenge for us to kind of weigh in the balance, proximity to one of those. If we're not going to tile it, does it make sense to put houses next to them? Because we're creating a problem rather than, that didn't exist before.
And I think that's a good question for the project engineers as they bring a project to us on a case-by-case basis. I've argued this with one developer's representative, and it kind of explained how it's not possible all the time to do that, or sometimes the irrigation districts won't allow it. And so each piece of property is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
That's why I think if we just can kind of bring it back into the control of the back into the process, so it's not just an automatic knee-jerk reaction, just tile it because we can.
But it also it brings it into the process. But I don't think we're equipped to really make good decisions around this. For example, a drainage ditch is very different than a canal, and that's generally there for natural drainage, right? It's also there for irrigation drainage that for once that did exist. It's also under the prospect of, well, we want to preserve this artesian well or preserve 100 feet of aquifer. As the city develops, what we're doing then is we're putting the cost of that preservation on a lot of people, a lot of homes, on developers to maintain the very few individuals that will continue to have wells in the city. And so it's a big cost and a big, potential, floods and risks and things like that on the whole to benefit just a very few.
I don't think it's a benefit of very few. I think it's going to benefit us as a whole. I really do. As
well, bring receipts on that. Bring receipts on that. Bring the data, because I don't know that we've got information.
Is it a problem to have this in here that says it has to be not covered unless approved by the council or applicable irrigation or drainage ditches? So they don't just assume that they could just tile a ditch without us saying yes or no? I don't agree with that at all. And I will tell you, the drainage ditches were not here before. We created the drainage ditches back in the early 1900s because the flood irrigation caused fields to be unusable because they couldn't pull the water out. The water just sat.
No,
Drainage ditches were built to pull that water out. That created our job.
The Army Corps did that to prevent floods, and absolutely, it was all created. Now aquifer was created, so I think there's an argument to be made that we're returning the earth to the natural state. Not that I want to have that argument. I'm just saying that there's
then fill it in.
There's
There's
all sorts of things that happen there. What I'm saying is we're taking a stance here, and I don't know that our city or the council is going to be equipped to have a discussion around these other than what shows up as our own personal bias and opinion.
Right. That's why this gives you the opportunity to say yes or no without them just saying, yes, I'm doing this.
Sure.
But you have the opportunity to look at this, and so does the irrigation.
But it contemplates a default decision, except I think I'd be more agreeable to it if we just said, if we took out they shall not be covered and said that, the decision to cover a drainage ditch is up to the council.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to ask Sean, I wonder, should we then, is this something we should maybe update some of our applications with? And require something, so if there is a ditch or a drainage, a canal, any type of water body that's going to be filled in or whatever, that there's some type of study or some type of information that's brought to the council during that? I don't know, I'm throwing stuff out there to try to say, to give us that information so that we can make. I'm very intrigued when you said that the problem went away, or if I understood you right, you had a problem with water in the crawl until it was tiled, and then that prevented the water from going into the crawls?
That's
Proves the
correct.
point that
Wow.
tiling creates
Absolutely.
no water.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This proves that point.
And when you're going to put a house there, you don't want water in the crawl space.
But you could also say that you can't build your house within 50 feet of an irrigation ditch, or whatever your water engineer says is the appropriate place
Right.
of a canal. You see it right here in our ponds. When the river rises, when the canals are full, our ponds rise 3 or 4 feet
Yeah.
right here, right?
And I think what we might see developers do is along those canals and ditches, they could dig down and backfill with bentonite and other impervious material that would effectively, achieve the same thing as tiling so that they could get those houses up to there. I mean, there's all kinds of engineering solutions for that. This is just to me that I'm not against it. I just think it's such a big topic that we're taking a stance here, and I don't feel like we're prepared to defend it. And when I look at the purpose of our public hearing, it's to make decisions based in fact. And the only thing I can do is show up here with a personal bias and opinion. That's my only challenge with it.
I'm gonna stand on my personal bias and opinion and try to protect the future is all I'm gonna say on that.
But-
I mean, that's my thing.
Yeah, and as long as you admit
To
that's
laugh at it,
no,
it's a problem.
it's not a laughing matter, but again, it's a personal bias and opinion, and it's fine for you to stand on it.
I will die on that.
So I
It's
think
fine.
Ryan was
Just
on
so
the
you
right.
know, Kevin, this is also something that the 4 of us have had multiple discussions, and we're not all on the same page on this, just so you know.
That's
But
fine. You guys, you don't have to do it,
no, let's
but
wait.
I'm just making my point right now today that this is what I want to see to protect the future.
No,
If you don't want to do that and you have your own decisions, fine.
Let me
Move on
finish.
with
Let
it.
me finish because I know we've beaten you up over
Yeah,
the
you
months
have.
about this, and that's not what I was trying to bring up at this meeting. All I'm saying is, I think your concerns are valid. 'Cause you've gone to the seminars and you've heard the discussion from the agencies, and we haven't. So I guess my point is that, and maybe we should have some experts come in and give us that information.
So you,
So,
Just
to
cross it off.
educate, to educate
So we can
us.
move on.
Yeah.
I'm tired. I'm done tonight. So let's move on.
hydrology report, I'm just going to leave that there.
If that's not something you guys are interested in,
Sean-
just cross it off.
Well, I would be interested in knowing more about it.
We can
But-
get some more information. Just cross it off. It's not going to solve tonight. If this is not something we're interested in, cross that section off. We'll get some more information. We could always bring it back later. After I'm tired of fighting everybody on this thing. I really am. And it's common sense to me, but let's just move on to the next section so we can get done with this thing tonight.
Okay, moving on.
Big box.
Big box. Oh, here's where my 50,000 came from. Okay. So this is just adding that language to the central business district like I did in the commercial district regarding the State Street and Star Road commercial developments.
So wait a minute here. So hang on a sec. Oh, the 50,000. That's all we're doing.
So the 50,000 is currently in the code. So what I did is I just took that number and I transferred it back to the additional commercial district standards.
Okay.
And then if you turn the page to the mixed use district standards, we also have the same consistent wording.
So is that what we don't want in mixed use districts? I mean, where's our mixed use districts? They're out further away from the city, or isn't everything in downtown CBD?
There's some mixed use parcels here and there that are.
We do have some that
over
are
here. One
that are
next-
currently zoned in mixed
yeah,
use.
the one on the corner of Seneca and,
Oh, you're right. Okay.
so yeah, so.
Okay. All right. All right. Any questions on that? Anybody? No? Okay.
Just one thought. I mean, and I know this is approved by council, but we're talking about big box, but this also, as we think of Highway 16 and commercial development that may occur along there, I mean, not just big box, but like industrial warehousing, stuff like that.
Would big box cover anything 50,000 square feet and above, regardless of what the box was?
Well, to me, big box means retail.
Right. Right, that's what I'm saying. Does 50,000 and above cover it without saying big boxes? Is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So let's,
If our concern is to try not to limit industrial type of uses, we could just,
Well, it's
Fix
unless
our-
approved by council. But I think to give people direction, including the council, as to what's contemplated, maybe we should be more specific and call out big box retail or take that out and just say all buildings.
okay, yeah.
Right.
but aren't we trying to, we're just trying to protect the downtown core from having this in there, right? We're
This
not
is
entirely
just
worried
CBD.
about,
Yeah, because it's just in the CBD.
Well,
but the CBD.
This is
rules
mixed
out
use, CBD,
all the way on the other way of Highway 16.
and then back here, it's commercial and office district. So it's,
So on the first page, yes, it was commercial. So that's, and we talked about big box. So I think if we want to, if our intent is to look at the retail, then I think we should have that wording in there.
either that or take it out and just say, you know, the measure is a single use building over 50,000 square feet is approved by the council.
Okay.
Now, now that may open it up to the council saying, oh, we want a big box store in the future. So if we're wanting to limit that, then we need to be specific, I think.
And then that would bring in the industrial part as approved by council.
Right.
Okay.
So,
Can you say that one more time, Kevin, please?
Nope.
So it sounds like we should just define big box as retail commercial that's 50,000 square feet or more. Is maybe prohibited, and then everything else shall be approved by council. Because if it sounds like
Yeah.
that's what we want to accomplish, right?
yep, and we'll make that consistent throughout.
I'm gonna ask you a question. And if we're in the CBD area, I'm gonna go back to your parking thing. And we have, let's just say, one of these Family Dollar things that comes in that's 20,000 square feet. How do you make that work where they're up against the road and parking in the back when they always want to flip it around? I mean, we're kind of contradicting their business models to work.
I think,
You see what I'm saying? I mean, how do you make that work?
to me, there's a balance there because you're going to have some in the front, some in the back, in my opinion. Because some of them, like the ones down between the Merck and Star Road, are such shallow lots that parking in the back is easier. When you get down farther down State Street, maybe having a building in the back and parking in the front is a better option. You have either way if your lot is big enough to maintain that.
Did we put it in the code though, that it all has to be on the front? I mean, previously, what we're talking about?
This is
Didn't
all,
we say in the CBD area that all the parking is going to be in the back and the building's going to be all fronted
I think that was in the architectural design
yes,
on here that we just talked about?
that's what I've added.
code.
That's what we've added, but you're right, Jennifer. I feel bad. I should tell you, council, I should call you by your appropriate names. I apologize. But with the architectural guidelines to council member Solmonson, and I feel bad calling you by your first names. I apologize. But
All by my first name.
Yeah,
okay,
Take my
thank you.
name
I
also.
appreciate that. It is in our architectural guidelines where it is suggested that this same thing is suggested when possible to have the buildings front the road with parking in the rear.
Does it say when possible?
I don't know about this, but that's what our architectural guidelines
Because it says,
suggest.
so this on the very first one, commercial buildings and centers, including shopping centers and strip malls immediately adjacent to State Street and Star Road shall front the roadway with parking located to the rear.
So I'm, and that's why I put the immediately adjacent. So if you look at the Whitener property, for example, or property that's extra deep, more than likely they're going to put that big box back towards the
So
back
like
of the
over River
property.
West property over here,
Which if you have
they're
the,
saying the big box could be in the back, but those smaller buildings have to be immediately fronted on there.
yeah, that's why I put immediately adjacent to give us that flexibility.
Similar to what they've done at
Ask yourself,
Albertsons.
what do you want your downtown to look like? What, how do you, I mean, we've already kind of figured out that maybe drive-through McDonald's are not the best idea right in downtown. So we need, if that's the direction we want to go, then we need to get it in the code so we can I mean, we've got plenty of places to put big boxes. We've got plenty of places to put drive-through restaurants. What do we want our downtown
Core.
core to look like?
Where do you want to put the stack for in and out?
Exactly. We
We're not getting
we
in
know
and
where
out.
we know where we don't.
He's not coming here.
Well, they up in Chinden. They put up on
It'll
Chinden.
be on 10 Mile at Costco. That's close enough. Because that line will be all the way to Star anyway.
You know what? We don't need more burger places. We need more pizza places. Well played. Oh,
So
wait, was my mic on? I. More dentists.
Hey, there's an ADA rule for dentist offices, one for every 3,000 citizens.
Okay, moving on.
Yeah. American Dental Association, not writing ADA,
Gonna say.
Not Ada County.
not Ada, yeah, not Ada County. Okay, what's the next one?
Okay, this was just chapter 4, additional regulations for all districts. We just wanted to beef up our building
Oh, yeah.
permits a little bit. Building permits shall not be issued on any property that does not have a valid address or assessor's parcel. That's just something we've
We've experienced this, folks.
to issue building permits before we probably should. And so we're just, we've been trying to be as helpful as possible, and it's come back to bite us every time. So we're just putting it in the code so people can see
There's
that,
not a question.
not a question.
Just say no.
Right. But if we don't have it in code, then it's hard to say no as an unallowed use. Yeah.
Okay, so 84810. Sure the folks at home are able to follow. Fencing, all open vision fencing shall be limited to wrought iron or open rail fencing only. Chain link fencing shall be prohibited in all residential or commercial districts unless required by an irrigation district or other jurisdiction for safety reasons and where wrought iron is not otherwise required.
Like that one, Kevin Nielsen?
I could come up with an argument against it, but I'm
You-
looking for debate.
You could come up.
It's not tiling a ditch, so we're okay.
I'm going to.
Oh, moving on.
So just a question though, so those that already have the chain link fence, I mean, they're grandfathered.
Their grandfather,
Yeah.
yeah. If they were to change stuff, though,
If they're to put up a new fence or to repair, can they repair
you
their
can
chain
repair
link?
your
Yeah.
fence, yeah.
Okay,
It's not intended to be Gestapo style, but it's to keep it clean.
Okay, under grading 84A11, grading of a property shall take into consideration adjacent roadways and properties. New construction shall not result in sidewalks not matching center lines of existing roadways. The city engineer shall approve all grading
You guys know where
plans.
that came from?
Jersey
Jersey
Mike's.
If you look at how that was constructed,
It's down in a hole.
it's low. They didn't match the center line of the road.
The sidewalk is lower than the roadway.
Yeah, there's nothing that prohibits them from doing that. So that's why we are establishing this code.
The finished floor of that building sits about 2 foot below the center line of the
Yeah.
adjacent road line.
When I think of center line, I think linear, but you're talking vertical.
Yes.
Yep.
Correct.
Do we need to say vertical center line?
No,
Okay.
that's a common
That's
term.
an engineering term. Got
Yeah,
it.
that's a,
When you're talking grading, you're implying vertical.
Got it.
Okay, under the hillside development, I just have the add the 25% slope maximum so we can meet the intent of our comprehensive plan.
Nice.
I think I'm probably waiting for some wording from.
I sent that to you several months ago.
I looked at you, I'm sure you.
I sent it to you the week before our last meeting, so we were prepared for the last meeting.
Oops.
Chain link.
wrought iron. Not hurricane fences. We don't have hurricane.
Let's go 3 rail.
Yeah. Okay, good.
This one's not over. It's not over.
I know. Next one, sidewalks and parkways.
Sidewalks and parkways. Just trying to update to make sure we're consistent. So,
Are you sure Jennifer doesn't want 10-foot sidewalks?
Do, but I won't.
Well, we got 8, but this 8 foot is how we approved it in our committee. In
Yes.
our transportation and pathways committee.
Additional sidewalk.
And that's my problem.
so 8 foot, detached sidewalks on Highway 44 in 2026.
Correct.
All right.
But however,
Uh-oh.
2026, ITD made them 10 foot already,
Yeah.
Right.
just so you're aware.
Okay, so if that's the case and we don't have anything else up there, if you guys want to make that 10 foot to be consistent, we can.
I think we need to change that. Well, no, we don't, because the other side between Star Road and Canada is our only segment left, and in the future, you're not going to be able to cross right there anyway. You're going to have to go down to the new light and cross that. So I'd say you just keep it as 8
That brings up a good point. Do we need to have something in there, Sean, about it, or it should match existing or something like that?
That's just
Or is that something we even need to worry about?
Well, I think ITD's plan is to have a 10-foot sidewalk along that entire corridor with all the new, going from Star Road to Middleton Road.
Right.
So I don't think we have to worry about that. 'Cause they're going to build it as a 10-foot segment anyway, within the right of way. Yeah. So I think we just leave it like it is.
Okay, traveling sleeping quarters. We added this, I think, Chief helped us with this one.
This change just goes in line with the ones that we just talked about previously. Well, in November, the few municipal changes to help with some of the situations we're having.
You need to move your camper, chief? Oh, okay.
Okay, mailboxes. We just want to make sure that they're, in addition to providing, all mailbox clusters are going to have be covered. We also want to make sure that they provide lighting. For folks if they're coming in late.
Can the lighting be solar, or is it
It can be
any which way?
It can be solar. It can be, as long as people can see what they're putting their key in.
You have a question?
Yeah, Sean, for the mailboxes, so is there anything like if it's on a collector road or sometimes we have them on arterials.
The unfortunate part is we don't get to say where they're at.
Right.
The mail,
We have
the
no
post
say on
office
the location.
Right.
dictates that.
Right, but can we, so do we have something like where a pullout, like an extra little width is required so that they're not parking in the street to get their mail? So that was one question. And then the other one is like, is there a ADA ramp or anything that's needed? Like to go from the street to the mailbox?
So you're saying like if it's along an arterial or collector, or regardless, access from within the subdivision?
Yeah.
Well, it's on an arterial collector.
I don't think the
See what
post
you're saying.
office is putting them on arterials or collectors.
So-
It's
Because they don't let
always
you, they
on
don't let you
local,
stop, they don't let
it's
you
on the
stop.
local
without-
roads.
So like in my my
It's a local road.
Rockbridge,
Mhm.
right? That's a busy
But it's a
road. That's
local road.
And so we have people stopping in the street and it's also a bike lane right there too, to get their mail. And so I don't know if there's anything we can do about that. Yeah.
Put it in an email. Don't
Yeah.
mail it.
City can't make it where you pull out for it.
Well, that's the thing
That's what I
that we
was
talked
wondering.
about that. I know
About-
we've talked about it in some hearings before.
We've talked about the problems are detached from the postmaster. I mean, we don't, a lot of times don't know until after the fact where he's going to approve the
Or do we just put in there
locations.
wherever your mailbox cluster
You have to
is?
you have to design.
Have a design pullout at that mailbox cluster.
Right.
I
I mean, it's as simple as that for
Yeah.
the
Right.
future.
let's add that you have to design appropriate
Yeah.
turnout, and then it doesn't matter if it's a collector, if it's they need to
Yeah.
provide that. And
At least the one car pull over.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then it puts the burden on them to get with the
Find the optimal
postmaster.
spot.
And Mel's really good in Star, but Eagle's hard to deal. Remember, we have four
Jurisdictions
different
we deal with.
postmasters in the city. We've got, we got Meridian, we've got Middleton, we've got Eagle, we've got Star to deal with.
And then some places where we might have a narrower road, right? Or a private road.
Okay.
I don't know.
So
So add that in there.
I'm gonna add that in there. I think that's a good idea. Turnarounds or turnouts
I want to be done by 9:30, guys,
shall
just so you're
be,
aware.
we're almost done, designed.
Yeah.
Let's do
You
it.
don't want to
Okay.
revisit the other topics?
We'll save that for a different.
Okay, standards for fireworks stands
Need some
and
food, man.
Christmas tree lots. We just updated the fireworks stands and Christmas tree lots. They're still not going to be allowed in residential districts. I had here Christmas tree sales lots shall be removed by January 1st. I think we should bump that, give them an extra week. I don't know if we want them
Absolutely
to.
not.
No, you want them to be working over the holiday and taking it down.
Yep.
That's up to you guys. We can keep it at the 1st.
I guess we want to turn it into a Christmas tree deposit lot that they then clean up.
The Christmas tree deposit lot is right across the street from my house.
I was just suggesting.
I thought it was your house.
Maybe giving them an extra week.
What?
I was just suggesting maybe giving them an extra week instead of January 1st.
If they requested that, is there a problem?
I don't know if it's even a problem. We
There
gotta
is-
start somewhere.
We do need to put some, we haven't seen it here, but I've seen it down the street where the lots have been up. And they've left the trees all standing there. So I don't know if it's just something we want to be, this wasn't my thing. I'm just thinking out
A
loud.
lot of times the Christmas trees, they're selling them the day before Christmas.
Right.
And then you've got that week break and people are out of town. I mean, do we want to just give them
It's good to have
more
a
leeway or?
A final.
The fireworks is they have to, so on January 1st at midnight, they have to stop selling. And then I believe it gives them 5 days to clear off the lot
Yeah.
from the time that the fireworks sales complete. So that's debris, everything off the lot
I
within
mean,
5
how about we
days.
just be consistent with what the firework stands?
So 5 days, that'd be
5 days,
December
yeah.
30th.
You can ask the Christmas tree lights people to turn around and have like a Republic dumpster there to recycle the trees instead of it clogging up here and over there all the time.
And we can get that as a city.
But no, just like make that a requirement. If you're going to stay open past 5 days after Christmas, you need to have a,
So they can
Dumpster.
toss them in there and it can get
Yeah.
hauled away without it being sitting there.
Yeah, I like the idea of them having the thing, but honestly, I want them cleaned up.
Yeah.
They don't look good.
Okay. Good. All right.
Okay.
So Build to Rent is the one that you're working with, Kevin.
Chapter
So we're
5,
not-
Kevin and I are going to get down and dirty on that one and we will bring it back to you guys.
Drive-through establishment, is that the next one?
Yes.
Let's just get in and out on this one.
It's page 85.3.
Okay.
What's wrong with the McDonald's?
Just a little too close to those residents in the back.
You need a Happy Meal.
It's just the depth that we.
So,
Is it busy?
yes, but Kevin, just that, we've had other inquiries about closer locations to put drive-throughs in that we need to address in our code.
Perfect.
More than just McDonald's, but ones that are closer to the residential.
We've got a lot of.
Yeah.
At the other ends of town, we've got a
Oh,
lot
man.
of big
Yeah.
shopping areas that can handle the parking and the buffering from the residential.
Yeah.
I just feel that one was just kind of crammed in there a little bit. Like,
You know, it's interesting because most of these places are going through, order in the app and then pull up to,
Right.
come up and receive it. And so I think we should contemplate a scenario where they don't have the external microphone, where you can go up with the app and even maybe they have a scanner there's your QR code.
So are you talking like in these spots? Some of the challenges is also the vehicle traffic driving through and the headlights shining through.
Sure.
All that kind of stuff is the challenges with a lot of the challenge. with this.
Yeah, there's a number of challenges. I'm just thinking of solutions rather than, blocking. Because I mean, they could screen from view. They could do all sorts of things. But
and then depending on the type of restaurant, I mean, a Chick-fil-A is a lot different than a Taco Bell or a McDonald's. I mean, a Chick-fil-A has, I think, 3 times the drive-through traffic. in
Right.
Some of those. And then, what, you saw the
you get
in and
through
out.
5 times faster.
You
too.
saw the in and out, but you still have to put those cars somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I did just see a story not too long ago that like a lot of
There's a fire up
restaurants
there today, by the way, I think. Oh, steam.
restaurants are moving to more of a bigger drive-through model.
Yeah.
And, they're not going away. They're only may become more popular.
I agree.
and, more need for them. So I think that we definitely
And I
need
could
to.
see McDonald's going to that route at some point. I mean, right now, a lot of them, you can't even go in and talk to a person anymore. You go and you order on the screen and then they just give you your food.
Right.
But
And
I
they're-
don't think we dictate that. I think they have to.
And they're going to like 2 lanes or 3 or more. Yeah.
If you remember
37 car
McDonald's.
stack
for Dutch Brothers, we could do that same thing for the
So-
next
But
drive-through.
McDonald's did provide us with data, sound data from their speakers when they came to us. So they were able to say, this is our decibel level to help us make that
The
decision.
challenge, so, and we actually went out there and did a sound test. The sound from the microphones aren't the issue, it's the traffic noise
Yeah.
that is the issue. So the
Cars-
speakers
it's the
themselves
cars
are the problem.
idling.
It's the vehicles going through, it's the kids getting out, screaming, running around, acting like yahoos out there, right, doing stuff. That's the challenge for those neighbors that are right behind.
So I've added all drive-through establishments shall require a conditional use permit unless previously approved through a development agreement. Again, it just gives us the ability to look on a case-by-case basis and
Are you sneaking in that development agreement option?
through development agreement.
Remember,
Let's see.
we had a couple of those come through.
Require
and-
conditional
yeah,
use
no
approved.
more.
Well, you guys approved the entire Norterra subdivision for unlimited drive-throughs, so we can't, so in their development agreement. So that's what that.
Right.
So some of them have been pre-approved for drive-throughs. We
And
can't
then-
regulate
And
them.
then, Chris came back through and wanted one for his, and, Ridley's wanted one for theirs, and
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, ixnay on
Yeah.
the DA.
We have some out there that, yeah. Stay on the DA. So all this is
I mean,
saying
what,
is,
what do you guys think?
I think you leave it open and that's why you have to go through the CUP to see if you're going to approve it or not in those areas. And I think that's what
Unless it's approved through a development agreement.
well, that means that we've already approved it once through a development
yeah,
agreement.
it's already been pre-approved.
So yeah, if you look at a plan new development, a PUD, let's say, and you say, yeah, you can have 3 drive-throughs in these locations, and we can pre-approve that through a DA without going through the CUP process on it.
Yeah.
That's all that means.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
My
sneak in
naive
extra-
side says, I don't have a problem going through each one. But I am new, so.
You're no longer new.
Then I
then we
guess my
did- so-
opinion still states that I don't care if we go through them all.
We'll just take,
Because
for
I-
instance, this
Stay.
piece of land between Dr. Dial and the subdivision road, right? Well, that doesn't have a DA on that, so they're going to have to come through with a CUP
Right.
to get it done. That's, I think, all we're saying right here.
So what was the deal then?
Didn't
where we
they
had
already
people
do that
coming
with the bank?
back and
They
requesting
did for the
blanket
bank.
approvals?
There's another piece in there too.
That was Norterra.
There's 3 parcels total. I'm just an example.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your,
Well, it seemed like we were opening Pandora's box because we did one and then like there was another one that followed right on and one developer was feeling, left out because his development didn't get it. I'm like,
Well,
our code's written the way it's written for a reason and
so are you?
if everything was equal, it'd all
so
be
are you-
rich.
Are you just stating then that Kevin, are you just stating that just strike the unless approved through a development agreement?
I just.
Not to, not
curious
to,
what-
not
what
to
people
advertise
thought.
it. Because we're going to know that those DAs have that condition already in it. So, I mean, if that's what you're thinking, we can strike just in the sentence that.
Look, I like options more than I like restrictions. So I guess I'm okay with that. The one concern that I have is when those DAs come to us, usually we don't have a lot of information yet. And some of these details, like, is it a Chick-fil-A or is it a, mom and pop type thing? It ultimately makes a really big difference. There's totally
You may
different
not-
impacts.
You may not know that either on a CUP either. I mean, there's never any indication to know what that drive-through is. You're providing.
That's a really fair point. I'm good with the way it is. Yeah.
Then under D, the applicant shall provide a 6-foot site or noise obscuring fence or wall and/or additional landscaping where a drive-through established stacking lane, speaker or window location may negatively impact residential use or district. And then I want to add to that, the administrator may require additional noise buffering after the drive-through is up in operation should excessive noise be observed. Because once, a lot of times until they're built, they get the light standards up, they get the speakers on. That's when we start getting the complaints. And if we don't have anything in the code that we can go back and say, hey, you need to provide more landscape, you need to shield your.
You need to say
lights.
light and, you need to say light and noise, not just noise though. Light and noise mitigation, the administrator part.
I've got noise on the next, or I've got light on the next page. So this is just the noise.
Well, but this, I got you. Okay.
So we're suggesting there,
Okay.
the statement says where a drive-through establishment, blah, 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 may negatively impact. Let's just assume that they all will have an impact. And instead of saying where, let's say that they shall provide these things to mitigate impact to a residential use or district. Because I think it's always a mitigation.
Without using wrought iron.
Chain link, maybe?
Okay.
Yes, the sound dampening slats.
All right. Yep.
Hey,
I like
so, Sean, on the first part of that, it says the applicant shall provide a 6-foot site or noise. I think you need to do an and/or.
Yep. Thank you.
Because you might need both or you might not need it depending on the style.
Okay. All right, then in G, and this one's important. So when immediately adjacent to a residential use or district, any portion of a drive-through restaurant use, including speakers, vehicle stacking, and windows, excluding parking, shall be located a minimum of 100 feet from any abutting residential use or district. Council may approve a waiver to this when the use is part of a planned unit development. This shall not apply to financial institutions. So again, looking at the McDonald's, if we had something like this in place, they would have, we're building in that buffer. Think about the car wash that we denied at Ridley's, for example. We had that buffer requirement and that it prevents them from building them too close to those residential uses.
They would have had to flip McDonald's around
Yeah.
and have the
Yeah.
drive-through more towards the front or the side instead of in the back.
And then when I say here, unless approved as part of a planning and development, so let's just take Norterra, for example. You come in, you've got this big piece of property, you don't have any residents, you're building the residence in there. You can design and put that in as part of the PUD on those restrictions and,
Yeah.
Can we say
that
something
way.
about within
that
that 100 feet that there's like 20 feet of landscaping and noise dampening type installation?
That's already required
Okay.
in our landscape ordinance.
So why do we have this is not applied to a financial institution when we're talking about restaurants?
Well,
Yeah.
because these are for all drive-throughs. So right now, and you're going to have a couple of them come up here in the next, you're going to have 4 of them in the next 2 months where the banks have the drive-through and you've got to approve the drive-through as part of a conditional use permit.
The bank's an allowed use. It's just a drive-through.
Yeah.
portion.
But bank drive-throughs don't necessarily have speakers, or if they do, they're very light. They don't usually get a whole lot of traffic. It's just a different type of banks are usually 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. They're not open late. They're not open weekends. It's a different type of drive-through. I think that
Yeah.
bank noise during business hours is different than a 5 o'clock morning breakfast rush and 11:30 at night
So just
munchie run.
just item G applies to banks. The previous item would still apply to all drive-throughs.
Yes.
So do you think that item G, is it really just like food? That we're talking about food drive-throughs? Because
Could
there might be
coffee.
it could be pharmacy. That might not be very loud. Pharmacy, financial, maybe a dry cleaner. There might be other drive-throughs that are not food.
True.
So,
So it's easier to say this applies to food establishments.
yeah, right.
To non-food establishments. How about?
Yeah, shall not apply to non-food establishment.
Drive-throughs that operate before,
Out of business hours?
yeah.
Food. I'll
Business hours.
work on that. bring it back.
The whole
I get what
intent-
you- I get what you're saying.
The whole intent is to protect those residential units
Totally.
that are these smaller lots, like this one over here,
Right.
from having drive-throughs
Business
right up
hours.
next to them.
And really, I mean, if you're on a, like, might not want a bank right next to you too, though, either, a bank.
But at that point, you can have a CUP, you're going
Right.
through that, and you could decide as a council, well, this is not the right place for a bank drive-through, but you can still have your bank there for all the walking traffic you
Yeah,
want.
I would hate to limit it just to the business hours because one restaurant might be open nine
Right.
to
Or a
9 to
coffee
4,
shop might
but then
open.
they go out of business and someone comes in and wants to be a 24-hour operation.
Oh, yeah.
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 Okay. Then,
That's in Middleton.
on H, all site lighting shall be designed in a manner that eliminates fugitive lighting from illuminating any portion of an adjacent residential use. And I want to add, the administrator may require additional shielding or modification to lighting if it is determined that fugitive light is observed after installation and operation.
Yep.
Something like that.
Perfect.
Just to give us an additional look at it and the ability to go in and fix.
And this is, I mean, we've ran
Deal with it
across
all the
this.
time.
Yeah, we've dealt with the Ridleys, we dealt with the McDonald's, trying to figure out ways to do it. We've had, I think Ridley's did a good job of going, I think,
Christian Brothers.
or Christian Brothers, for instance, had the issue and they went and mitigated it for us after the fact, but they don't have
We
to.
just want to have this, really want to have this disclaimer on all of our
Trying to be a good
commercial
neighbor,
uses that are
trying
up
to get it in
against
code.
residential. That we have the ability to go back in after it's in and make modifications. Yeah. Yep. Okay.
All right, you got 4 minutes, dude.
All right, we're getting close. Live work. So I'm going to skip this because if you look at live work and then you look at the next section, which is mixed use development, I'm trying to differentiate between the two. And we've had internal discussions and I don't think we're quite there yet, but in my mind, live work is one unit and you can walk in
Yeah.
you walk into the commercial, you can walk up a stairway and you can get into your residential. Mixed use is commercial downstairs, residential upstairs with separate access points to those residents. So you don't have direct access upstairs and downstairs. So I think we need to, because there's a difference, because it comes down to, a lot of it comes down to fire and building code requirements on how those are built. And we've learned a lot from our one live work community.
Which turned out really good.
It worked, it's beautiful. If you guys haven't seen it,
It is interesting. If you go down there and walk through it though, you've got a business down below and an apartment upstairs and they're not generally the same. When I think of live work, I think the guy that's working there lives there.
Right.
Agreed.
That's not the case.
And
It's-
that's
this guy
another,
lives here,
another
And there's another,
discussion we've had is, do you
another
want to,
renter upstairs and it's a commercial property as far as I'm concerned.
Wait, but somebody's living
Yeah,
upstairs.
that's somebody, that's not a business
It's a
upstairs.
rental.
Who cares?
I'm just saying that's turned out differently than I saw in my mind.
But that doesn't make it I mean, it's still a residential use. It's not a commercial use.
Well, here's what's happening at the salon down there is, and I found this out because our inspectors were over there from the Shore Water District, is they're turning that into an Airbnb where people are coming and visiting their son, child, daughter that's working in the hair salon, and they're renting the apartment upstairs for a week and a half while they're staying and seeing their
It's being creative.
child.
Yeah.
It's
What's the challenge there?
it just doesn't fit the national standard for what a live work is.
The definition
It's
of live
concerned.
work, yeah.
But it is what, I mean,
Just different than I saw
It's
in the
just-
definitions.
right. typically we thought that you would live there, you would have your business downstairs, whatever.
Same old.
But you have the right to make adjustments to your plan. You still own the entire building. There's one unit that's owned by the same person. Whether or not they rent
The
it out
problem
to
is, so
somebody.
let's say you build the building like they have over there where you have the downstairs commercial, upstairs is residential. You've got a stairway that goes up, okay? I agree. Well, why should we limit it? Why should we limit what they're doing? But code wise and fire code wise, you've lost that separation because now you still have one unit, but you've got two different uses in one unit. And The fire department.
Does one require a sprinkler?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, so that's, live work, yeah, so live work units do require sprinklers. Live work units also by definition have a limited occupancy of less than 10 downstairs. So if you take a live work unit and then you knock down that common wall, it's no longer a live work unit, it's now a mixed use. So I think that's where we're at, is we have so many definitions, and believe me, the product, like the mayor said, is a great product. It's a good thing, but I think we just need to work on that definition so we all know which way we're gonna go.
And it is
not
for
knocking
public
down the
safety.
wall is different than doing an Airbnb or subleasing.
Right, yeah. So I think, but that's the whole thing, is in definition, nationally, it is live work units are owned by one person, they live up top, work at the bottom. And where we start seeing the renters coming in, or the BBVIOGNA, whatever they call those, verbos, that kind of throws us off based on that definition of what this was
I guess
proposed.
the thing is, if we just require them all to be sprinkled, it doesn't matter at that point. You just put in the code that all these units must be
But
sprinkled.
it's not just sprinkling, it's
It-
addressing.
It's
I
addressing.
mean, all of our concerns have to do with public safety.
Right.
That's what it does. I mean,
So-
we don't want to try to regulate what people do. It's all public safety.
So these buildings currently are only addressed to the front with one address. They were not addressed with unit 101 at the front, meaning first floor 101, second floor apartment no 102, because the 102 addressing comes off the rears, which should be the road off the rear. So the addressing we learned
then we
was just off.
And require them to have,
Well, we're gonna,
I mean, we could put it in the code to make it work and not
Yeah.
impact
So
anybody's
the point is, we're
right to do
just-
business.
we'll bring those two back to you guys
Okay, gotcha.
once we figure out internally how we want to.
Oh, those are
So this is your tiling?
This is my guess. Well, yeah, because you're, he fights me as much on this one as I fight him on this.
Sorry, one last thing on this. This is a definition. You say mixed-use development is a property or structure that blends commercial and residential uses together in one building. That is not the definition.
This is not the definition. This is the specific use standards. There's the definitions in a different section of the code.
Okay,
And-
so we're not changing the zoning definition of mixed use.
No, but hey,
no,
he's
no.
gonna come up and say something real quick. He's on, he spent the whole night with us, so he's.
Oh.
willing to- And just so everybody knows on the record, just put your name and address.
Mayor, thank you, council. My name is Ron Irish. I live at 11676 Amsonia. I noticed that you guys spent more time talking about chickens than you did fire alarms. I don't know anything about chickens, but I do about fire alarms. And when you're talking about putting heat detectors in a garage, you got to be careful, because heat detectors are not life-saving devices, as you know. And you can't just take one heat detector, because they make like 3 different types. They make 135 degree, 195 degree, 210, and a rate of rise. And that's what he was talking about, is the rate of rise. But it also tells in the National Fire Code that you have to have so many per bay or so many per ceiling area. So just putting one in the garage, I guarantee you the contractor will do the cheapest way possible. He'll put it right over the front, right over the door going into the house.
I think it's said in our code though.
yeah,
on
so.
the bay.
Yeah, so sir, just so you're, tonight was just more of an introduction. We're gonna work on the actual language for the code, which talks about rate of rise, talks about if you have a
Petition.
a
or-
petition that you have to have one on each side.
or Fixed ceiling, I mean.
Yeah, fixed ceiling. And we'll address all that, and thank you for that.
Just thought I'd throw that.
Two people that paid attention to me
Oh,
tonight.
That's
That's
great.
right. That's good.
That's the best thing you could say, is talk fire protection with that guy.
Thank you. All right, next one, Sean. Wireless.
Wireless communication facilities. So antennas used for any type of public safety shall require a certificate of zoning compliance. That's not a council approval, it's just to give us the ability to review it, and yeah.
What do you mean, public safety? What does that mean? Like, the fire department puts up an antenna on their building, you gotta have why?
We
What's the purpose of this?
just to look at it, make
Yeah.
sure.
See how those guys run around town? They can do anything they want.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially with
Because we
lights
don't,
and
we don't
sirens.
want a bunch of ugly antenna and ham radio antennas and all this other stuff popping up everywhere that's just
We're gonna have a
willy-nilly
discussion
installed.
This one.
Okay, that's fine.
So help me understand the difference between some dude's ham radio antenna and a public safety. I'm not making the tie-in with public safety.
Some could say that ham radios are public safety in the event that our system goes down. Ham radio.
Isn't saying that public safety
I-
wants that to be reviewed.
But I also think I give Sean a lot of crap, but I don't disagree that if we're going to put in a new radio antenna to expand our system, that we make sure that it's supposed to go there, right? I think I don't see a reason. I'm going to always hold it against you, but
I'm
Well,
recording this.
maybe we need to be specific that private ham radio operators are not considered public safety. It's not public. Right.
Yeah, it's a poor example.
It's private infrastructure.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is we don't want a bunch of stuff getting put up that doesn't comply with what we're spending all this time and effort to try to make our downtown core look away. And we just, so
Love it.
that's the intent. It probably doesn't state that. That's the intent.
Hey,
Radios.
love
But
it.
you're not limiting people from putting it on their house.
No,
Okay.
no.
Ham radio.
Those are exempt. I think those are exempt. I don't think you can regulate.
I was just curious. That was
Yeah.
just a weird one.
Banyan vines.
Next one. You
Well, it's been so long. I don't
We're
even
past
remember.
our.
No, we're good. We're good. Preliminary plat process.
We have a 10% buffer.
I got a 10% weight loss right now. So I'm
We can,
You're
That's a-
hangry is what
You're
you are.
welcome.
you're,
Thank you.
okay, so if you guys could look at Article B, real fast, subdivision design and improvement standards.
Oh, yeah.
So common and shared driveways. Common and shared driveways shall not be permitted for residential developments unless an approved emergency turnaround is provided and the driveway is approved by the fire district. Again, we've been having
flag lots.
flag lots. It's just to prevent flag lots. We,
Yep.
rather than them bringing them in and we tell them at the public hearing, the
Nope.
flag lots is gonna take care of that. Now, if they wanted, and the reason I worded it this way is there's gonna be some subdivisions, like commercial subdivisions that are gonna require common drives and things like that. So I didn't want to completely eliminate them. So if they can provide turnaround and access for Victor to support, then
And I will tell you, Victor took us on a drive. When did we do that? 2 weeks ago? On snow day. And the ones that that we've approved are a problem. Well, and over here at the river, whatever you call that, Moon Valley,
Moon Valley.
you know, you get people blocking them, they can't access. I mean, it's turning into a bad thing.
8 years doing this job, and this has been a struggle the whole time. So I'm happy to see this, that it's not permitted.
Yep.
And I don't think that there should be an unless approved. Why don't we just strike it? Just get rid of it.
get rid of what?
Well, what does that do for like the
There's,
cluster, the forward lot clusters at Moon Valley?
there's.
Well, it's not a flag lot.
No, but
That's
it's a common
discussion.
drive.
Yeah.
common drive.
Well, if there's a distinction between a common drive and a flag lot, then let's get rid of the one that's a problem.
Problem is we don't know. It's yeah, it's like case by case basis. I mean, if you could have there's situations where someone wants to split a 1 acre lot into 2 half-acre lots. And there was one on Brandon that we did that. And he wasn't able to get, split it right in half to get frontage requirements because his
see.
house is right there. So we let him do a flag lot back to that back side. That's a little different because they can provide Victor with the proper turnaround. back
Got
there.
it.
So
It
that's the
sounds like
reason
this
for
is
that.
good then.
Yeah,
All
okay.
right. This is more teeth than we've ever had, which is great.
Yeah, and then under block lengths, we always have that issue of waiving block lengths. So I just put remedy, let's see, so it says block length shall not exceed 750 feet without an intersecting street, alley, or other city or ACHD, Canyon Highway District,
Change that to
District.
HD4.
Approved remedy. Remedies include traffic calming and our waiver from city council for the lengths. So it just gives us the ability to look at those case by case basis. Victor doesn't like speed bumps, but
The traffic calmings, and if you look at the fire code, which you're ready to adopt, it's prohibited in the fire code. Yeah, so I think we can do that. But I think just traffic calming devices, we can maybe talk about the speed cushion versus a traffic calming. So I'll get you the language for it.
Okay. All right. That's it, guys. We're fine. That's it,
Yeah.
Mayor, we're
Good.
done. Thank you,
Any
everybody.
any questions there of staff or anybody? Mr. Irish, thanks for sitting around all night with us. Appreciate it. It is, what is it?
Shall not
9:39, and we're going to be
Unless
ending tonight.
by council.
Which
So
one?
real quick, yeah, 10%.
Right.
We're going to have another one of
Oh,
these though. I don't know.
Flag
if it's gonna
lots.
be
Flag lots
February
are
or March.
prohibited in all residential zones greater than R1 unless specifically approved by council. Any approved flag lot shall also be approved by the fire district. And again, you're going to have some large lot subdivisions.
So
that-
why is it different than, like the language a little bit different
Guess we're not
than
done.
D1?
Uh,
Common/shared driveway. I mean, they're very
So
similar.
so the common drive is like Moon Valley where you have 5 houses there that actually share that common drive, and then the residents, take down the signs later on that say no parking. Not that that's ever happened. And then you have the flag lot that's just usually one house that goes up a driveway over to the end, and it creates that flag.
They own that.
They own that. Yeah, it's a one person usually.
Got it?
Yep.
Okay, so guys, just real quick, either sometime in February or March, we'll have a follow-up with a plan to get this all out to the council for a public hearing in April.
April's our plan.
Is our plan, target date, okay? So now it's 9:40, sorry, Jacob. And so we'll end the workshop. Thank you.